It helps if you unmute right before the show starts. Hey, everybody, welcome to The Hang Up. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Hopefully you enjoyed your weekly dose of dad rock right there. I'm here because, well, it's Wednesday and it's time for my dose of therapy. This is my sort of opportunity to interact beyond merely discussions about religion. We do a lot here on the Sunday show and everything else, but it's still a call-in show, and we will still be taking theist callers. Will have priority when we get to calls in a little while. But it's often a chance for me to talk about politics and things. And last night was the vice presidential debate. And quite frankly, it was both the best and worst, least important and most important vice presidential debate that I can recall in my entire lifetime. As a matter of fact, apart from the fly on Mike Pence's head and and some older VP debates, like, for example, when Dan Quayle tried to compare himself to Jack Kennedy, and his opponent was like, I knew Kennedy and you're no Kennedy type thing. Outside of that, nobody gives a shit about vice presidential debates. Nobody pays any attention. They're inconsequential. You could probably screw it up and still not have a massive impact on the top of the ticket. I heard that Trump was actually watching it and then live tweeting or live truthing. We should put truth in air quotes every time we mention that site, but what his thoughts were. I took notes last night. I did not take as detailed notes as I did for the presidential debate. But it was nice that we had women moderating. When by the time we tuned in, they were already standing there, but they did do a handshake. And they started immediately by asking about Iran, because Iran just launched an attack against Israel, and the United States stepped in to help squash that. And so the first question that they asked, and I'm not going to go through every question here, just want to do this one at the start, is for Governor Walz: would you support or oppose a preemptive strike on Iran? And let me just start by saying that Walz was obviously nervous. He mispronounced Iran right off the bat. But it's kind of almost the old school. I'm going to get that wrong, but as long as we're constantly correcting people on Kamala versus Kamala, maybe we should correct some of them on Iran versus Iran. But I get it. Coming from the older background, saying Iran is, I don't know, maybe you listen to Flock of Seagulls a little too much. But his answer was basically that we don't need information about Trump's crowd size. Trump's advisors have said bad things about him. Vance said he was unfit. And it was it was not so much an answer to the question, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike on Iran, as it was, here's the portion of my stump speech that I've been told I need to make sure I cue up right off the bat. And then they went to JD Vance, who said, thanks. Here's my prepared statement about who I am and how we need better leadership, and how Trump delivered stability in the world by establishing effective deterrence. And he kind of leaned into this strength through power and peace through fear, because he's like, we need them to fear us. And but to answer your question about would I support or oppose a preemptive strike in Iran, the answer is it's up to Israel, and we should support them. So it's a way of kind of giving lip service to this blind support of Israel. There's a lot more that happened during the debate. I'm not going to go through the specific questions, but I do want to note that this debate was more substantive than most of the other debates over the last 10 years. Basically, any debate where, from the time Trump announced his candidacy on, this one was more substantive than any of them. There was less hostility. Even though the mics weren't shut off normally, there was not a lot of interruption. Matter of fact, Walz kind of interrupted first, but even that even that interruption seemed gentle, kind of like, oh, hang on. And there were a couple back and forths like that. One thing that was a little surprising was there was tons of agreement. Those two agree with each other so much that comedians were suggesting maybe they should run together. From the fact checking, Governor Walz was more honest, but not completely honest. and JD Vance was more polished and less nervous. Both had some good zingers, but on the facts and on the substance, I felt Walz was generally better. He was nervous at first and he warmed up. However, JD, by virtue of the Democrats constantly talking about how weird he is, basically they set the bar so low that he effortlessly vaulted over it. And if you weren't going to bother with any fact checking, which oddly enough, they had made the agreement that they weren't going to fact check, and then they fact check him, and he gave them a look like, I thought we weren't going to be fact checking anybody. And it was wild that they did it and got that response from him. But if you care about truth, I think Walz won. If you don't care about truth, I think Vance won. I think Vance had a more polished debate performance and a style. And because the Dems set the bar so low by just talking about how weird he was, it was pretty easy for him to step over that bar. And they tossed some zingers kind of back and forth. I've got notes on some of it, but tonight's guest, who I'm thrilled because we had to reschedule, and then I thought we were going to end up having to reschedule again. But tonight's guest is Ian Harris. Ian's a comedian, writer, director, and editor who's appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live, Comedy Central, a couple of one-hour TV specials. He wrote, produced, and directed his first feature film called It Burns When I Laugh when he was 28. More importantly to me, he's performed at secular events and conventions, which is where we met. He's also an MMA instructor, so I won't be pissing him off much by saying martial arts are bullshit on par with astrology, because he can kick my ass with a feather. So as someone else who is constantly updating and publishing political and humanist messages on social media, that's how the two of us have managed to stay in each other's orbits and interact on occasion, despite not seeing each other in several years. So please join me in welcoming from Los Angeles, Ian Harris. How are you, sir?
Hey, thank you, Matt. Thanks for that intro. And a lot of martial arts are bullshit. I'll just say that.
Yeah. It's so funny. I was telling him before the show started that I fell into a rabbit hole on YouTube where they were going through all these martial arts masters that are like, oh, nobody can touch them, and they wave their hand and people just fall over. And I'm like, yeah, but I've also seen, I used to watch, UFC stuff back in the early days. And that's the part that's not bullshit, when you see someone get clubbed like a baby seal and they go flying across the ring and crumple into a little ball.
I actually did one of my skeptic talks at one of those conventions was on that bullshito, as they call it sometimes, and yes, all that sort of stuff. And I still would have people, even self-proclaimed skeptics, coming up and going, okay, but I did this as a kid. And it's like, it's funny, the things that people want to hold on to, even though you can completely, prove it empirically, like show that it doesn't work. And that's what the UFC did very early. People still want to hold on to that. Even, like I said, even some self-proclaimed skeptics want to hold on to the fact that, yes, but my karate works.
And I got duped in person. I was in the Navy for 8.5 years. And when I was on an aircraft carrier, there was a period of time where reservists would come out and live on the ship with us. And so there was this reservist dude who I don't know how he managed to stay in the military, because while I was definitely overweight and out of shape towards the end of my military career, this was a big dude and just like a kegger shaped body. And I remember he came down to the berthing to talk about how he was an Aikido practitioner, and he would take somebody's arm and slightly move this way and then push his finger right here and they'd go straight down. And it's simple physics, but he's making it, I'm channeling my chi through them and all this. And I got duped and fell for it. I had all the ninja books. I memorized for a role-playing game campaign, the hand symbols of Ren, Pyo. I can't do them all now because my fingers are cramped, but To, Pyo, Ta, Shai, Jen, Retsu, Sai, Zen. I remember all that shit because I was doing this character for this. I couldn't punch my way through a paper bag, but it's all right.
Yeah, I mean, but the funny thing too, though, is actually some of that stuff does work in small doses in the right way. But it's like speaking of Aikido, like the Steven Seagal stuff just absolutely cracks me up. That it's like, and that guy is so full of himself. It's unbelievable. But you know, I mean, that's it's funny because you were saying about being on, you know, social media and humanist messages and political messages. It sucks. Luckily, I'm a comedian, so people are a little bit nicer with me. They let me say things because they go, well, he's being funny. But man, when you point out people's miscomings or shortcomings, you're always the asshole.
Yeah. It's hard to tell somebody that you think they're wrong without them taking it personally. And it's something that I struggle with. I mean, I've been doing this for almost, 20 years now, between atheistic experience and here. And it is, I've come to grips with who I am and who a lot of people seem to think I am. And who a lot of people seem to think I am is this asshole that's just looking to embarrass religionists all the time, which is genuinely not at all the goal. But I understand, I understand completely how someone could get that impression. And it's not a light year away from what actually happens. But I don't set out to offend, and I'm not looking. I'd much rather have honest, reasonable interactions rather than look at the trees and bestiality is proof that there's a God. And which is literally a video I had to do like a month ago because of a really bad argument. But you mentioned this. No, go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was going to say, and so many times I've seen you, I've seen people defend slavery which is something that, again, with you, and it's mind boggling to me that it's like that is even a place that people will go. But I mean, we see it with politics. We see it with Trumpism and the cult of Trumpism. People will defend anything if they've set it in their head that this is the way. And yeah, I mean, I'm never trying to go out of my way to be a jerk to somebody or whatever. But my policy is don't start none, won't be none. But they always want to start some. So
it's absolutely wild. It's one of those things where there's plenty of people, no reason to go down that. Let's talk a little bit about the debate thing last night, because apart from this one, how many other VP debates have you paid any attention to?
I mean, I'm kind of a political animal and always have been. So I've tried to watch most of them my adult life and even when I was younger. So like the ones, I remember the ones like you talked about earlier, like the Dan Quayle, the you are no Jack Kennedy, and I remember the fly on the head one from Harris and Pence. But I think I'm probably there's definitely a gap there. Do I remember the Gore? Was it when I don't remember watching Al Gore debate? Did he?
When he was Clinton's VP? Yeah, I don't remember that either.
Yeah, I mean,
although at the time when Clinton Gore ran, I was a Rush Limbaugh ditto head at that point. Like I was in the Navy, and my lunch break was basically me sitting there listening to Rush for a couple hours every day.
I honestly can't, just knowing you now, I can't even picture that. That's pretty funny to me. But yeah, I mean, this one was for sure one of the most substantive debates I've ever seen. Which actually I saw a lot of people talking about how that made it boring because we're so used to this. Like you were saying, like setting the bar for, we set the bar for Joe Biden, and then we set the bar for, for Vance, and Trump is just this whole thing this whole thing that he does, that he's done for however many years now, where he just lies and sensationalize and everyone, the media just goes to this guy. He says some insane shit and they just jump all over it, and it's 24-hour news feed on this guy. And then when the debate comes and he's saying all kinds of shit and just being all over the place, we're expecting that now. And then you see something that's just a debate where people are talking about the issues, and people are like, this is boring, let's change the channel. And that to me was a little sad to hear that today, because I heard that quite a bit. Oh, it was boring though.
I think the fact that it's a VP debate, and so there are people who watched the entire debate. And there's a bunch of other people who the only thing they're ever going to see about it are highlight clips and reels and the zingers. And for those people, for the people who only watch the clips and the summaries and stuff, they're going to get some of it fact checked and filtered. And I think Walz is going to come out ahead on that. But what's interesting is for the people who actually watched the debate last night, both candidates got a huge bump after last night's debate among people who watched the debate. So their favorables amongst debate watchers before the debate, Walz was at 14 and JD Vance was at -22. After the debate, Walz jumped up to +37. So that's a 23-point increase in favorables. But JD also had a massive increase in favorables as well. He went from -22 to -3. So
I saw that.
That's still a 19-point jump on favorables. He's almost worthless.
It's so funny. I was watching that clip probably an hour ago. I was watching a clip an hour ago of them talking about the favorables, and they were saying, so he jumped 19 points. He's still at -3, and I just was like, how unlikable is this jackass? Like he is so unlikable that it's a 19-point jump. That's a huge jump. That is a giant jump. And he's at -3. Yeah, and then it'll only take him a couple of days to say something negative about, he'll pop up somewhere on social media calling somebody some sort of racial epithet, and then he'll jump back down, hopefully.
It's wild that Michael W., why don't you call in and explain one time where I haven't been fair, since you think being fair looks good on me? If is it so wild? Imagine like getting one of the ESPN reporters calling last night saying, and it'd be like, and JD Vance from downtown comes in and puts up 19 points of favorability rating, just boosting himself to just shy of nothing and still 40 points behind Tim Walz.
Yeah. It is
absolutely wild.
The thing, I mean, I think you're right though about the weird thing is he didn't, but okay, to interrupt myself, he didn't come off as weird, which he did come off as slimy in my opinion, but he didn't come off as weird, which makes me believe or know that it's an act. With Trump, he can't stop himself from being triggered. He can't stop himself from saying gross, disgusting things. He can't stop himself from being weird. Vance goes out on the campaign trail, and I think there's some social awkwardness, but when he's like talking to the camera and saying like the Haitians are eating your pets and whatever, he knows what he's doing. That's like calculated weirdness, which I don't know why you would want. I guess he's trying to keep up with Trump, but the fact that he can pull that back and not, he wasn't triggered to say, Haitian people are eating your cats. So that just tells me that this is calculated. And I'm like, why are you being calculated and being weird and saying these things unless that is the brand you think that has to be the brand they think is winning. That has to be, well, it's working for Trump, so we're going to double down on it. I guess it's bizarre to me.
Yeah, JD was really good at spinning, and as long as you don't have fact checkers, spin is all you need. And he stayed on point, and he didn't get rattled at all. And then when you add in all the points where they were agreeing, granted, I find him to be rather reprehensible. I thought some of the key points that Walz pointed out that were good was, he pushed him on, did Trump win the 2020 election? And JD Vance would not acknowledge that Trump lost. He just said, I'm focused on the future. And then also Walz was pointing out that the only reason Mike Pence isn't here is because Mike Pence agreed to certify the election. And now they need someone who will do what Trump says if there's an election to impose. And will you tell us right now that you will certify election results, even if, Trump doesn't think they're that way? And he wouldn't do that either. It is very clear.
He then went and said, instead of answering it, he asked the question. He said, did Kamala Harris censor people? First off, there aren't any new censorship laws on the books that I know of that the vice president passed.
Yeah. There's nothing the vice president passed, but
that's the biggest thing.
Granted, she was the deciding vote on a couple things because she breaks ties in the Senate. So
Right. I don't remember any of them being censorship laws.
No.
And the thing that threw me, I mean, I get what he's trying to do. I mean, I guess it's smart politics for dumb people, but the entire time he kept saying, and this isn't new, he's been saying it for a while, under Kamala Harris's regime, Kamala Harris this,
Yes.
Kamala Harris did. And it's like, you're running for vice president. You need to know what the vice president does. The vice president has zero legislative power other than breaking a tie. And it's not the vice president's policies. It's not the vice president's regime or whatever you want to call it. And he kept saying under her. And it's so disingenuous. And he knows it's disingenuous. And that's what really bugs me is that was never, I know they weren't fact checking, although they did a couple times, but that it really bugs me that no one ever says the vice president is not in charge. Quit saying under her.
Here's what I sent. So I sent this to Jimmy last night at 8:14ish. And it was after he pushed back on this. And I said, I wish that Walz would have responded with, he wonders why Vice President Harris hasn't done this and hasn't done that over the three and a half years that she's been in office. Well, call me old fashioned, but I think if you're applying for a job, you should understand the job. And he's asking to be vice president and erroneously thinks that the vice president makes policy.
Right, exactly.
That is what I sent to Jimmy last night that I wish he'd have said.
I keep saying my big thing is nowadays I just go, because I hear this all the time. She's been here 3.5 years. Why didn't she lower egg prices? Why didn't she do this that she's saying she's going to do? Why didn't she? Oh, she wants to lower these prices or she wants to put in this policy. Why didn't she do it in 3.5 years? And then the next thing out of their mouth is she's going to ban fracking and she's going to do this and she's going to do this. And I just go, well, why hasn't she done it in 3.5 years? Well, because vice presidents don't do that. Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know that's where we were going. That's good to know.
It's absolutely wild. We're gonna move on to calls here in just a couple minutes, but I want to make sure I go through the lies or partial lies from both of them, as have been pointed out by fact checkers. So on immigration, Vance said we have 320,000 children the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. The fact checkers determined that is mostly false because the federal oversight report is not what they said. Basically, there were 32,000 children who failed to appear for their immigration court hearings, and 291,000 children that ICE had never served a notice to appear. It's not that they don't know where they are or lost them; they're not missing, and so it's an absolutely incorrect way to frame it. Vance also said there's an application called CBP One app where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole and be granted legal status. That's also not true. It's a scheduling app that allows you to schedule an application for asylum or parole. And then there's the full process. It is wrong to pretend that this is an app for illegal migrants to apply for asylum, apply for parole, and be granted legal status on the app. On the abortion case, Walz was wrong or lied. Hell, just say he lied. He said the whole thing about, was he in China this month or this month? I don't care because he was there in the summer that this was going on. And maybe when he was younger, he just exaggerated, shifted back a couple months. I wish he hadn't, but I wish he would have just said, yeah, I lied. I got there a couple months after that, but I was there to experience what was really going on in China, and I was there close enough to this time frame that I said I was there then. My apologies, the spirit of what I was saying, blah, blah, blah. Spin it however you want. But he didn't. But what he did say was that Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies, which is false. Project 2025 encourages collecting more detail about abortions and at what stages of pregnancy they are, but it's not in any way tracking having a registry of pregnancies. Now, that doesn't mean that this batshit crazy Handmaid's Tale vision of Project 2025 isn't eventually going to have a registry of pregnancies. We could probably just start them right off the bat with Elon Musk volunteering to impregnate Taylor Swift and anybody else. Anyway, J.D. Vance also said that the Minnesota law that Governor Walz signed says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives is under no obligation to provide life-saving care. That is false. That is a flat lie. Experts have studied this. And in May of 2023, Walz signed legislation that updated the law to infants who are born alive are fully recognized as human people and therefore protected under state law. There is no state in the United States where it's legal to kill a baby if it survives a botched late-term abortion. It's just nonsense. This is fear-mongering. On Iran, J.D. Vance said Iran launched this attack because it's received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to Kamala Harris's administration. Well, first of all, that's a lie because it's not Kamala Harris's administration. But it's also not true because under Obama, Iran did take $100 billion in unfrozen assets as part of the Iran nuclear deal, which Trump later overturned. And then as they were getting ready to get those assets, because a deal fell through, they didn't get the assets, but they did give money. Governor Walz said that when Iranian missiles fell near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain damage, Donald Trump wrote that off as headaches. And that's true. In 2020, Trump said he heard that they had headaches and it's not very serious. And he repeated this claim on October 1st of that year. Trump responded to a question about whether he should have been stronger on Iran by saying, because they injured American troops. And he goes, what does injured mean? You mean because they had a headache because the bombs never hit the fort? So that was true. Wall said he misspoke about Hong Kong during 1989's Tiananmen Square protest. I think this was clumsy and mishandled. And you're a nice enough and honest enough guy, Governor Walz. I already told you what I thought. I mean, not that you're going to see this or care, but J.D. Vance on the economy said what Harris has actually done is drive the cost of food higher by 25% and the cost of housing higher by about 60%. That's inaccurate, but grocery store prices have risen about 22%. And home prices have risen about 38%, not the 60%. There may have been a peak 60% at one point there, but that's not where we're at. Vance said that Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. That's mostly false. You guys can go do a search for fact checking. I'm not going to read all these. Governor Walz said in the last 12 months, the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history. That was fact checked as mostly true. Walz's son evidently witnessed a shooting as a 17-year-old at the community center while playing volleyball. They're not listing this as either true or false. They're just stating the information and pointing to news reports. On healthcare, J.D. Vance said Donald Trump could have destroyed the Affordable Care Act. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care. This is the most obviously stupid fucking lie that J.D. Vance told last night. It's not even close. He repeatedly tried to destroy the Affordable Care Act and kept failing. And so when all of those attempts to destroy it ended, he tried to find a way to work around it. You cannot ever suggest that he worked in a bipartisan way to save Obamacare. I mean, that's more fucked up than a soup sandwich right there. On climate change,
John McCain,
if it was, yes,
right, won that one vote.
Yep. Yeah, and that's why he doesn't like John McCain. So on climate change, Governor Walz said that Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past, but Donald Trump called climate change a hoax and then joked that these things would be make more beachfront property to invest in. That is a true claim. Vance used to acknowledge climate change stuff and has since stopped. It's wild the truths that you throw out the window in order to try to be the second most powerful person, or you're actually not the second most powerful person as VP. You're just in line to be the most powerful person. But there's a bunch of other people who are more powerful than the VP, including like the chief of staff. I mean,
and the hooker.
Tim Walz. Well, whoever he's partying with at any given time.
Exactly.
And actually, as vice president for Trump, you are always behind whoever the last person that Trump spoke to, because he tends to, if somebody goes in and says, here's the way things are, he just goes with that because he's too stupid to know how to investigate or figure out what the truth is.
Yes, Vice
Tim
President
Walz,
Laura Loomer.
oh my God, just scary.
Sorry. Derail.
No, you're good. Tim Walz said we're producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. That is true. So keep that in your ammunition bucket. Tim Walz also said that Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal taxes in the last 15 years and up through the last year as president. This is mostly false, and it's an incredibly stupid and pointless thing to bring up. We already know he's a billionaire. We already know he cheats people. We already know that he got away with not paying a ton of taxes over time. Instead of saying is something as stupid as he hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years, which, by the way, he's going to pay tax for businesses and personal stuff. So he's going to have a way out of this every time. Just point out things that he's actually said, that he paid $641,000 in 2015, but he only paid $750 in federal income tax in 2016 and 2017, and in 2020 reported no income tax in 10 of the previous 15 years. So you got the facts partly right, but you fumbled over it, and then it makes it look like you're just bitter that he's rich. And don't get me wrong, it's okay to be bitter that he's rich when he's a fucking lying cheat. Hell, it's okay to be bitter that he's rich just because he's rich. Nobody needs $1 billion. If you got $1 billion, start giving it away till you're back down to 999 million, but nobody needs $1 billion. Yes, I just pulled an arbitrary number out.
True though.
Walz said that Trump gave tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened is there was $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. And that is also mostly true. Then the second most damnable lie from J.D. Vance was about January 6th, where he said that Donald Trump peacefully gave over power on the 20th, as we've done for 250 years in this country. That's the most dishonest spin. I mean, it is true that he left office on January 20th, just like he had to, because he was out of options. But that ignores everything that happened leading up to the January 6th riot. And they just released information today from that case where a Trump campaign official was basically calling for them to riot, let them or make them riot, I think was the quote from the campaign official. And that, along with a bunch of other things where Pence was constantly trying to talk Trump into, hey, just take a bow. Just go ahead and say, you don't have to concede, but you can just say this process is over and move on. All of those things, we may never see that trial. We may never see the end of that trial. Who knows what's going to go on? If he wins, then all of that immunity, I don't know. What are you going to do if Trump wins? Are you going to stay here like we did last time and try to make things better? Or can we throw in a towel yet?
I've actually, believe it or not, I was in the UK in July, and we were looking at, would we relocate here? Would we relocate somewhere else? Seriously, like honestly looking at what would we do? Would we rent our house? We have a house here in LA? Would we sell it? What would we do? Because I don't know that I could stay here, and that I have a 19-year-old daughter. Could she stay here? I got a lot of hope when Kamala Harris, I was really angry when Biden dropped out because I wasn't sure how Kamala Harris was going to do. And then when she started surging, I just got, I swear my blood pressure, I was having blood pressure issues. And then I realized it was just stress. Blood pressure went back down. It's crazy. I have a blood pressure monitor now. I'm like in pretty good shape, and I have a blood pressure monitor. Yeah.
I have just one, and actually, Arden just purchased another one, and it arrived today. So just before we went live, she took her blood pressure, and then I took mine, and mine was it like 97/65 or something like that?
Nice.
Yeah, better than mine.
Yeah. Of course, I've had a triple bypass, so I've got this lovely scar on my chest. But since the heart surgery, and the dumbasses who were like, this guy's not going to make it 5 more years, I'm doing better. I'm healthier than I've been in 30 some odd years. So you haters just keep hating, and you prayers just keep praying. But I'm going to keep on living. We got a bunch of callers queuing up here, but I want to make sure I gave you a moment or two, since I went through all those lies and partials with respect to the debate. Do you see, and what do you see as far as a winner? Does it matter? And kind of the feel from the debate for you. Was this a positive for Walls? Was it a positive for both? Was it a negative for one of them?
I mean, I don't think, they say the VP debates are move the needle much, and I think that's probably true. I think it was actually a positive for Vance in the sense that, like you said, he didn't appear like a complete crazy creep like he normally does. And for Walls, he wasn't as happy go lucky as we normally see. But I think, like we said, substantively, he obviously won that debate, and I think it's pretty much a wash. All the polls I'm seeing or data I've seen, it's like 43-43, and with whatever's left, I don't have the math off the top of my head, like it's always off anyway, but like 16% say they're not sure, or whatever, or it was a tie or whatever. And I don't think it's going to move the needle much. But I think that Walls got out of there being this fact that he's nervous and he says he was not a great debater. I think it was good that he got out of there fairly unscathed. He definitely didn't get beaten. But yeah, I don't think ultimately it's going to move the needle. I'm always surprised that anything moves the needle. I'm always completely surprised when they say someone is an undecided voter. I don't think the people are as undecided as they say they are. I think it's a lot of times you have a lot of Trump supporters who don't want to say it out loud, so they say which is odd that if you don't want to say it out loud, that means there's something wrong with it. But I don't think it's going to move the needle, and I'm just so surprised that anyone here is sitting around going, we've got Trump, we've got Kamala Harris. Let me see how the JD Vance Tim Walz debate goes before I make a decision.
Yeah.
It's just hard for me to believe that that's a thing, but I mean, maybe it is. I mean, the more I talk to people and the more I see people post things and the more I watch YouTube videos and see the comments, the more I realize how very little the average person knows about anything. Anything. I mean, from the, what has she done in 3.5 years to, just basic policies, basic civics, basic understanding of how things work. So few people understand anything that I took for granted as learning in middle school. And so it's hard for me to understand that. And on my podcast, people always go, there goes Ian again, upset that people don't get stuff. And I'm like, or not getting that people don't get stuff. And I go, no, I get it. I just don't understand it. Like, I mean, I get that people don't. I just don't get how in this day and age, with all the information that's available, that you still are believing insane nonsense, or you don't understand how anything works. So
yeah,
we'll see. We'll see what happens.
It's going to be interesting. As a reminder, this is just one of many shows here on the Line Network, and it's called The Line because they're all call-in shows. I don't have this week's full schedule, but what I can say is that tomorrow on the Transatlantic Call-in show, starting at 2 p.m., it's going to be Aron and Dr. Ben. And coming up this weekend, I would imagine, because I'm working at Reptile Expo Saturday and Sunday, but in the evenings we might be around. I know Jimmy Snow, by the way, who has a podcast, is also going to be doing shows probably every weekend between now and the election, covering what people are saying, what the polls are saying, and in many cases doing an absolutely stellar job of saying, okay, if you still want to vote for Trump, call in and explain to me why, and let me talk to you about it. Give me your top issue. Give me your top two issues. Let's take a look at this. Because a lot of people that he's spoken to, I don't know that he's necessarily changed that person's mind, but there are certainly other people out there who share those views, and they would call in and say something like, oh yeah, my primary issue is this. And it turns out they're wrong about which candidate actually has the position that they most likely agree with. And I'm going to pull out the same statistic I've thrown around 50 times in the last couple of months, just because you talk about wondering why people don't get certain stuff. We are now flooded with so much information and misinformation, and a complete inability for some people to tell the difference. And that's before you even add in anything like AI or intentional misinformation. And so in a recent poll, 49% of Americans thought that the unemployment rate was at a 30-year high when it was actually at a 30-year low. Now, it's one thing to not have the information. It's another thing to think reality is the exact opposite as it is for fully half of the population, or nearly half, I guess, for those people who want a technical victory because it was 49%, as if that's something we should fucking dance about.
Matt, you're lying. You said half.
Yeah. Damn near half. If I cut a cake 49%, 51%, I don't think most of you would notice. But on that note, there's a bunch of shows, including the Sunday shows at 2 p.m. and at 7 for the Sunday show after dark. Mondays, Skeptalk. Tuesdays, Chewed Gum with Eve and Alyssa. If you're ready, I'm ready to jump into some calls. I've got a theist here who wants to talk about Hitchens. So how do you not do that?
Right?
Yeah. So John's calling from Ohio and says that he doubts Hitchens would support modern day Democrats. John, welcome to the show. My first question is, why should any of us care what Hitchens would think? And moreover, why should any of us care what you think Hitchens would think?
Well, that's a good question. And I do want to say here, I don't want to be presumptuous and speak for him. I'm a very big Hitchens fan. And, I don't think he would appreciate me saying, oh, he would think this. I'm more kind of just poking at the question. And the reason why I thought of this is because last week or a couple days ago on the line, I saw that the admin of the line channel posted read Hitchens or something like that. And I was curious, well, first of all, is your opinion of Hitchens, do you lump him into the same category as Dawkins? Do you still respect his opinions?
I don't respect Dawkins' opinions on a number of subjects. Dawkins has been transphobic repeatedly, and I've spoken about that. I disagreed with Hitchens on a number of things while he was alive. So I disagree with both of them on some things and still agree with them on others and respect them for that. I don't know, Ian, where are you at with this?
Yeah, I mean, exactly the same thing. I find that we have this, we lump ourselves into communities. You remember the atheist community. People would always call it the atheist community. And that's what we always say. That's one position on one, subject. And just because somebody's an atheist or somebody who I look up to in many other ways doesn't mean that I agree with them politically. I know that Hitchens was, I don't know much about his politics, but I remember at one point during the Iraq War, wasn't he pretty pro-Iraq war?
Yes.
If I recall, I remember Janine Garofalo, the comedian friend who couldn't stand Hitchens because of his stance on the Iraq war. So, I mean, it seems a little irrelevant to me what I only care about him in regard to the thing that he's an expert on that I might be interested in hearing about. So I don't know. I mean,
I think one thing, John.
Guess one of the things,
John, I'm gonna let you go here just a second, John. But I think one thing is that there's a difference. Atheists tend to not be top down. We're not getting our marching orders from somebody higher than us. It's not a top down structure the way it was when, for example, I was a Christian, where my parents and the preachers, these are the people who are supposed to teach me what God actually wants. And so it's an entire top down structure that doesn't exist for us right now. So go ahead.
No, actually, that's a great segue, because one of the main things that I think that Hitchens maybe would consider himself an expert on would be George Orwell, and George Orwell was a big critique of was a big critique. Had not a lot of nice things to say about fascism in particular, and I think a lot of people use the definition of fascism, think it's basically institutionalized racism or something like that, or just against any group. Doesn't have to be racism, I guess. But really, fascism is it's when you have media, education, business, and government, all kind of taking marching orders. And they don't actually have to be within a top-down system. I think, well, that's something that I've realized as I've gotten older, that if you have everyone has the same, ideology, there doesn't have to be any laws passed. It's just the spirit of the ideas unfold coherently, just together. And what comes to mind
where
was
does
about
everybody have the
that
same
particular,
ideology?
huh?
Well, you're like, you're describing fascism as this, basically authoritarian thing. And I'm like, yeah. And then you're like, but you don't need any laws like that if everybody disagrees. But I'm not aware of that ever being a realistic option that everybody agrees.
Well, if everyone agrees in the education and in the majority of mainstream media and in the government, like for instance, like I can't have a YouTube conversation about transgenderism, and I can't really have
Because
it at school.
transgenderism isn't a thing.
About well, I'll give a specific example if you want. I mean, but like last week I was trying to talk.
John, what do you mean when you say, let me paraphrase, are you saying that you can't have a YouTube conversation about transgender issues?
My comments get automatically deleted.
Okay, but you're saying your comments on somebody else's channel get deleted?
No, automatically. They don't even post in the first place on anywhere. And the same thing I was trying to comment about.
Hang on.
Because last week I had a discussion
don't do an
with...
and. Don't do an and. I'm trying to understand this. So you're saying if you post a comment on some YouTube channel or any YouTube channel that references trans issues, it just gets automatically deleted?
Yes. So I have to word it very carefully.
Who says, is the automated deletion YouTube doing it, or is it channel operators? And how do you know?
It's YouTube doing it, and because I've noticed a pattern. This has been happening for like years. You know what I mean? If you just reload the page and go back up to the channel, my comment's gone. And it's actually annoying because I'll sometimes spend a very long time trying to explain something, and then I go back and it's just deleted.
How do you explain all the transphobic comments then that appear all over YouTube videos attacking me and the people on the line? And why is it just your comments that are getting deleted?
I don't know actually. But same thing about last week. Even I was trying to talk about.
Ian has a question, John.
Just question. So I go on YouTube and I'll make a comment every now and then, and I'll say something offensive or swear or something like that, and it'll ask me, "Are you sure you want to post this? It has the F word in it or something." And I say, "Post anyway." And I've never really had them deleted, but it warns me this might get deleted because what you're saying has curse words in it. But also sometimes you post something on YouTube and it doesn't stay at the top. It goes into some weird other place. That just literally happened to me today where I posted something and it ended up in the middle of the chat. Are you sure that that's not the case? Are you sure that it's just not getting lost, or that maybe it's asking you ahead of time and you're hitting the wrong button? I'm just, because I've never seen this, and I've seen a lot of pretty nasty, vile, and definitely transphobic language on YouTube. So
yeah, what are you saying that's getting deleted?
I mean, nothing. I mean, I remember one time in particular, I was making an analogy of how, basically, gender theory, as a lot of it's based around incantation, like believing in magic, and that but even when you call it, dark agents will move in and then will do evil things. You know what I mean? If you convince someone of this magic, essentially.
So basically, you're claiming that gender theory is rooted in some sort of magic?
Well, it's funny because actually, when you were going about it last week, when you were talking about it, the reason why I said that there's no expert in gender theory, what you were doing, what you were describing, it sounded like a Catholic trying to explain transfiguration to me, and why.
Well,
why
I don't care what it sounded like to you, John. I'm trying to understand your statement, because it seemed like you're saying that gender issues are some sort of wicked spell that can take over people.
This is funny. Yeah, well, there's a reason why, people understand what it's.
You literally said something like this. I'm asking you to clarify it. Why are you laughing and avoiding clarifying it? If you're going to say that people are censoring you, or that YouTube is censoring you, and then when you say something, it sounds so bizarre, I'm like, maybe they just assumed you were a troll and joking and talking about magical bullshit. But then when I ask you to clarify, you're not doing anything to clarify this. So give me an example of a comment that you made that got deleted?
Well, I would say that, like, I was saying that, I don't even think exactly what I said. Someone was asking me if magic is real or not, if spells exist. And I said, I can think of an example. And I basically said, like, you can convince a kid that he's his wrong gender, and then dark agents will move in and transform the person's body. And you can even do that to a degree to a kid to make them actually believe that's true. And then dark agents will move in and transition the child, basically. And so that reality will even...
What are dark agents?
Reality.
What are dark agents?
So in this case, it would be like a surgeon, but I just said agents because it's a group of people. It's an agent, as in just something agential.
So basically, you said that you can convince a kid that he's in the wrong body, and then dark agents will come in and transform him. But what you mean is, not dark agents transforming a body through spells, which was what you were asked about, but instead surgeons using medicine to help reassign someone's gender. That's what you mean by dark agents?
The initial incantation, I was saying, like, this is a weird argument.
What is the initial incantation?
But the incantation part would be the calling into a new reality when you say that you are a boy or you are a girl to the person.
How is that a spell or an incantation? So first of all, John, I'm going to correct you. Nobody's running around telling people what they are. These are people who are expressing who they are, and then people are either acknowledging and doing whatever they can to help that person, or they're being like you and suggesting that this is dark forces and that they've been misled by a spell. What's the spell here?
Well, I mean, can I go back for a second there?
No, what's the spell here? You're on the thinnest fucking ice, John, and you already knew this before you called, because you've called before.
I don't know that. I mean, this is like...
Okay, John. What? John, I'm telling you right now, you've called many times before. You spew out some absolute garbage, and now you're whining about having your comments deleted on YouTube because you're spreading magical transphobia. So I'm letting you know you are on the thinnest of ice on my show. Is that clear now?
That's fine, sir.
Cool. So what's this spell, and how do we know it's a spell? And where does the power for the spell come from?
Man, like, this is such a weird route to be going down, and this is not what I was calling that at all.
I'm sorry, John. John, which one of us mentioned spells being used to trans kids?
Well, if you don't understand what I mean by
I'm sorry,
spell,
John.
I mean, like,
I'm sorry, John. I'm sorry, John.
I'm
sorry, John. I'm sorry, John. Which one of us mentioned spells being used to trans kids, me or you?
Me.
Yeah. So why are you complaining that this is weird when I'm talking about what you brought up?
I'm saying, well, what I brought up is weird, and I was trying to give an atheist of how you can understand why cultures have the idea of a spell.
I'm not looking for a cultural. I'm not looking for some cultural sociological understanding. I want to know what you think is a spell. Where does the power come from? I'm asking you, John. What is it? Are you saying?
I mean, I was really getting across the idea that words have the power to transform reality, and some do it in a dark way, and some do it in a light way. And so the dark way is basically going along with a lie. And by the way, I have people in my family who have problems with reality, and the worst thing to do to them would be to go along with it, frankly.
So you have religious people in your family. Wait, so is this a serious argument you're making, or is this just some sort of funny, like, trolly thing that you're coming up with, that it's like an incantation to say you're a different gender, right? I mean, that's what I'm getting, that you're saying that the telling somebody they're a different gender, which I don't know if that happens anywhere, is an incantation, and therefore it's likened to an incantation, and therefore you are making it so. Is that kind of what you're saying? Are you actually making that argument, or are you just making it kind of cheeky? Like, oh, it's kind of like an incantation.
Here's something interesting, actually, because a disproportionate of children who are trans have borderline personality mothers, and a classic borderline personality mother is basically what the witch in Hansel
John,
and Gretel
I need you
does.
to answer Ian's question. This is
yeah,
not
well,
John's gonna. This is not thin ice, motherfucker. Answer his question.
What'd you ask in particular?
Oh, you don't remember. Could that be
Is
because
this
you're trying to speak and not actually listening? Try listening. Go ahead. Sorry, Ian.
No, you're good. It's your show too. But is this a actual argument you're making, or are you just trying to make some sort of a a troll argument, or like you're just trying to be kind of cheeky, like it's the equivalent of an incantation, or are you actually saying that people speaking this are putting truth to words or power or whatever you call it, by someone calling somebody trans, therefore they're making these children think they're trans? Or is that really an argument you're making, or are you just kind of making some sort of a
the argument I was using had nothing to do with transgender folks. It had to do with explaining how fairy tales, why people like fairy tales and why they match onto our psychology, basically.
Yeah, Ian,
it was an argument about that, and I meant it completely seriously.
John, at no point did I give a shit about a psychological lesson of why people believe fairy tales. I'm asking you about, you replied to someone saying, do spells exist, by suggesting that dark agents are using spells to turn kids trans. And I've repeatedly tried to ask you clarifying questions about it, and we are no clearer than we were when we started.
I think you think it's more complicated than it is. I mean, like, I could just say to someone, can you
John,
give me that water over there?
John,
like, if they ever seen Dune, it's the same idea in Dune.
John, Dune is fiction. And the Kwisatz Haderach and all of that is fiction. But John, do you have a degree in psychiatry or psychology or something else that would make you an expert in treating people with mental disorders?
I've had people who have a degree in psychology say that I sound like a professor.
John, do you have any degrees in any of that?
Don't think that matters.
Well, it matters to me because I'm the one answering the question. How quickly would you like me to hang up on you?
I don't care, honestly. I have a good future, man.
Cool. I don't think you have as good a future. Ian, have you got any other questions for John, since John won't answer the questions that we ask?
I was talking about Hitchens. Now we're talking about magic. Who's the one going off topic here?
Here, John, let me mute you so that you don't get to talk while Ian and I are trying to figure out whether or not we're going to bother continuing to Oh, you hung up. You hung up. So here's the summation real quick, John, with a good future. I don't give a shit what Hitchens would say, whether or not he'd agree with the Democrats. I also don't give a shit what you think Hitchens would say on whether or not he'd agree with the Democrats. Your opinion about Hitchens and Hitchens' opinion, were he alive, are completely irrelevant to my assessment of who I'm voting for. But when you start to whine about how suddenly your comments are getting deleted from YouTube, maybe it's because your comments are stupid. Maybe it's because you're suggesting that there's magic spells. When somebody asks you, do spells really exist? And you're like, well, you can convince someone using it, and then a dark agent will come in and trans them. And you talk about transgenderism, and you say you have people in your family who have difficulty with reality, and the worst thing you can do is go along with them. And then the reason that's the reason the question was relevant as to whether or not you have some training in psychiatry or psychology, because you seem to think that you're the one who gets to decide what's right for other people that you have determined have a dissociation with reality. And C, then you don't have any standard or expertise by which you're diagnosing these people. And so now you're saying you've met people who have a problem with reality, and you've become convinced by some other expert that it's wrong to coddle them. And then you look at trans people, and you, with no training, decide that they have a problem with reality and that therefore they shouldn't be coddled. Well, John, I'm going to borrow from Governor Walz and tell you to mind your own business, because you clearly don't know what you're talking about at all. And it's probably a good thing that your uninformed, misinformed comments aren't appearing on YouTube quite as much as you'd like. And you know what else isn't going to be appearing as much as you like? You on my shows.
Yeah, I am a little sad that I didn't get to hear the Hitchens argument. He wouldn't get there, but I am curious as to what his argument could be. I don't know anything about Hitchens' policies, but or politics, but I would have a hard time thinking that he would be going along with Project 2025 theology. Turning the country into a theology. I doubt Hitchens would have been too on board with that. But what do I know? And like you say, it's completely irrelevant.
I mean, Hitchens and I never had a conversation one-on-one. I was at the last event that he was at, and I got to speak to some people close to him, and we had sort of proxy conversations on some of this. And I've read a lot. Hitchens' political views varied quite a bit over his life. He was largely opposed to abortion in the sense that he viewed it as killing life, but he was also at times pro-choice, acknowledging that his personal view on abortion shouldn't necessarily be used to tell somebody else what they can or can't do. He was opposed to fascism, theocracy, and all of the religious elements that would have been in Project 2025. Where we sit on economic issues, I don't really know. And at the end of the day, it's what we've got is a theist who has called in to repeatedly be problematic on gender issues, which is why he was. I have to remind people, Ian hasn't been on the show, and so Ian's not privy to the fact that John calls over and over with the same bad stuff and dishonest stuff. So, and by the way, for any of you tuning in, you're like, man, Matt was really short fused with that guy. No, there are people who call who start off on a very tight leash, and it's because we've had repeated problems with them in the past. I really wish people just, I would take fascist, transphobic, Trump supporting, like super wingnuts all day long on call-in shows if they would just answer the question that I ask.
But Matt, I think the problem is if they were willing to honestly answer questions, they wouldn't have those positions.
That could be. That could be. I'm gonna still keep trying.
Yeah. Can I ask a question about you? I mean, about this question, I just really quickly. Has anybody ever just told you what the end game is in their mind with liberals trying to turn people gay or trans? Or there's always this. I always hear this that the liberals are trying to. We're saying the words that we want these kids to be trans. What's the end game there? Why are we trying to turn kids? How does that benefit us? I've never been able to figure this out.
I haven't either, and so I'll tell you. One of the things I took notes on last night. Maybe this is something that I'm going to need to work into a video at some point for the Atheist Debates Project, because it's very frustrating to me if you look at the model they're talking about. Here's a God, creates everybody, has these rules, wants these things, and then here's what's going on in the world. And when you point out what's going on and how it conflicts with the model, if there's strong evidence for God, if this person over here was losing their voice and they prayed and God healed them, and you're completely convinced that only an unreasonable buffoon would deny that it was God, then why does God keep hiding? If God has given such amazing evidence that only an unreasonable buffoon would deny his existence, then God should just be able to show up and talk to all of us right now. There shouldn't be any hiding. Why leave us debating? If the evidence is actually clear and obvious, then that makes no sense if there is a God. Now, absolutely. The thing that it ties to in the debate that I took note on, which is really strange, is this. Trump, when he was president, the Republicans stole a Supreme Court seat, which should have been Merrick Garland's, from Obama. And Trump got to fill that one and a couple of others. And so he essentially stacked the Supreme Court with judges that were picked by the Heritage Foundation, who is also behind Project 2025, with the specific goal of overturning Roe v. Wade, even though when they all sat there in their Senate hearings, Roe is settled law and I can't speculate on this. There's no point for us to vet Supreme Court justices anymore, because they're never going to answer the questions that are relevant. And if they have an agenda, they're definitely not going to tell you about it. Trump's dumb enough that he will tell you what his agenda is. Project 2025, folks, not about being smart or dumb. They know if we put this out here, even for the people that will draw in those individuals who want this Handmaid's Tale version of reality. But for anybody else who's like, "Ooh, that's a bridge too far," we can just say, yeah, that's not official policy. Trump doesn't know anything, but we're not going to do that, And then Trump's like, "Oh, there's some good ideas in there, but there's some extreme stuff too." And I can't do a Trump impression. I need to get Jimmy on to do that. But
there's some extreme stuff.
Yeah. And so when you do that, you have plausible deniability. So you can put your plan out there. But the question is, if Project 2025 is what they're willing to be public about, what else are they wanting that they're not willing to be public about? But they did this with abortion. And the whole mantra is, let the states decide. Let the states decide. Let the states decide. It should be up to the states. Okay. There are reasons why we don't leave it up to the states when we're talking about things that are basic human rights and healthcare. You don't get to say, hey, you can have interracial marriage in Mississippi, but not in Louisiana. Because when you move across the border, all of a sudden you're not married anymore. And you can't have gay marriage in Massachusetts and then disallow it in New York. There's a reason why we honor these things. And there's a reason why there's some things we solve at the national level. But listen to what happened during that debate. JD tries to say that it was left to the states, and then they want to attack Tim Walz for what his state did. So Tim Walz and the citizens of Minnesota did what they're supposed to do. When the federal government killed Roe and failed the citizens of Minnesota with the protection at a national level, they worked together to implement, vote on, and instantiate policies that protected those rights. So JD's with a group that says we should leave it up to the states until those states do what they want, what they don't want. And then they try to hang a bag around the governor's neck for doing exactly what they said that he should do. What Tim Walz did was not only right for his state, but Walz doesn't believe that it should be up to the states. He wants this to be national. He would like for us to have our rights protected no matter where we travel freely in these United States of America. So the irony is, the people who are saying leave it up to the states don't really want the states to decide this. And the states that are deciding this, they don't want to be deciding it either, because it should just be the fucking right that it's been for 50 fucking years, guaranteed by a Supreme Court case.
And why are they even talking about a national abortion ban if their sole goal was to leave it up to the states and states' rights? But the funny thing is, if anyone wants to remember back, well, none of us are old enough to remember it, but we've read about it. That's the argument that they say, that the racists say and the right wingers say when you talk about the Civil War. They say, you say it was about slavery, and they say no, it was about states' rights. That's the talking point. It was about states' rights, and yes, the states' rights to own another fucking human being. That is the right that you wanted the states to have. It wasn't about what the horse and buggy speed limit was going to be. It was about the owning another human being. But they always go, well, it's about states' rights. So anytime they start talking about states' rights, they're talking about the state's right to take away somebody else's civil rights. That's always what they're talking about when they say states' rights. Because it's the same thing when they say small government. When they say small government, they're talking about government's ability to tax them. They're not talking about your civil rights. They're not talking about your rights as to your own body. They're not talking about any of those things. And they want authoritarian control in those areas, but they just don't want to pay taxes. That's really the bottom line.
I think my favorite is they want a government small enough to implant it directly in your vagina.
Yeah, exactly.
We got a few more calls here today. And is it Dosage or Dosage from Netherlands calling Prunjaheem?
Well,
I was asked. Welcome. I'm trying to figure out how to say your name. Is it Dosage or Dosage or? I couldn't make that out at all. I'm having difficulty understanding you. It says here that you say you're going to prove God using cosmology. I don't know if you're building the table to do that right now, but you're on with Ian Harris and myself. So go ahead.
That's fine. Yes. So have you heard of the cosmological argument for God?
I've heard of many. Are you going to go with the Kalam or another version?
I'm going with the William Lane
Yeah, the Kalam cosmological argument, which is everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause for its existence. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah. So what do you think about that?
The conclusion of that argument is the universe had a cause for its existence. I think the argument is flawed in a number of ways, which I've talked about many times, but the argument does not include God, and so therefore it cannot ever be used to prove God. God isn't in any of the premises or the conclusion.
Okay. Can I challenge you to give me a sound and valid syllogism for transgenderism?
Well, transgenderism isn't a thing, but since you called in to say that you could prove God with cosmology, no. How about you prove God with cosmology?
Well, I'm just holding you to the same standard you're holding me to.
No, you're not. I'm not calling into your show to talk to you about being trans. You're calling into my show claiming that you can prove God using cosmology. Can you do that or not?
No, I can't. But you're saying if I call into the
goodbye. No, goodbye. You're not going to lie to get yourself on the show and then try to trap me in something. Like, you know who you sound like? You sound exactly like Andrew Wilson. You see, I was actually paid to come do a debate on Modern Day Debates once upon a time, with me defending secular humanism and Andrew Wilson, who I didn't know or didn't know anything about, agreeing to defend a biblical worldview. And in his opening statement, after I presented my case for secular humanism, in his opening statement, he said that he didn't care about any of that. He could concede my worldview, and all he needed was for me to explain how a man can be pregnant. And I can actually do that. It's really trivially easy for me or anybody with any sense at all to explain how a man could be pregnant. But what I decided to do was to explain that since he was going to sit there and mock trans people ending their lives and lie about what he was wanting to represent, that I was not going to stay there and continue the debate. And I got up and I walked out. Now you call my show and you say that you can prove God with cosmology. And when I present you verbatim off the top of my head, a word for word presentation of William Lane Craig's Kalam cosmological argument, you drop the argument entirely, later acknowledge that you can't in fact prove that God exists using cosmology, and want to ask me to defend or present a valid and sound syllogism for transgenderism, which makes you just as dishonest and just as sleazy as Andrew Wilson. As a matter of fact, I would imagine you're trying to score points with him, but no matter how much you try, he's probably not going to sleep with you because I think he's straight. Thanks for calling, though.
That's 2 for 2. They came on saying they had something to do with religion and went off into something to do with transphobic ideas. Is this a common thing?
Oh yeah. Well, part of it is, so our producer this evening is my lovely and talented partner, who's also the host, or one of the hosts and the producer for the Transatlantic Call-In Show, who's here defending trans rights all the time. And so because of that, the theists, I will say, the theists who know who I am have given up. There's a reason I created an entire show called End Boss. They treated me as if I was the end boss. They had to beat me to beat atheism, and they failed to do it over and over for 20 years. And so they've decided that instead of actually trying to defend their actual God beliefs, they're just going to be little trolls who come in and do, you're gay, homie, your girlfriend's a man. And it's funny because they correctly gender her right before they misgender her. It's like an, she's hot. I got confused, but she's totally a dude and you're totally gay. And so they're like, oh, can you defend this? And what would be really funny is if Andrew Wilson had said, I want to debate Matt on transgender ideology. First of all, I'm not necessarily the person who should be doing that debate. It would be nice if trans folks and experts on gender stuff were doing that. Just random cis guy doesn't need to be the guy doing it, but I would have done it. I would have continued studying up. And if somebody wanted to have a discussion about that, they can book a debate. They can even call in and talk about that. But when you call in and say, I can prove God, but really I just want to mock trans people, you don't get to stay on the show that long. It's weird.
Yeah. Very interesting. Like you said, you could just call and say that's what you want to talk about. Why not just talk about.
Yeah, it is bizarre to me how obsessed people are with this less than 1% of the population who largely want to be left the fuck alone. They don't want you to comment. They don't care if you, in the privacy of your home, think they're a real man or think they're a real woman. They don't give a shit about that. They don't care if you think that they shouldn't be in bathroom X, Y, or Z. And if you think you can always tell, because you can't always tell and you're not going to know. And that's the real reason. It's a bunch of homophobic dudes that are so afraid they're going to end up on a date with somebody who has or had a penis and that's going to say something about who they are. That's 95+% of all the transphobic crap.
Yeah, it is bizarre to me how that dominates our political, especially like on the social media. When I start talking politics with people, I would be like in the high 50+% of the, somehow it ends up going there, and usually it's about trans people in sports, and especially with me as an MMA guy, like they always, and I'm just like, that's your number one issue. That is your number one issue. Something that doesn't affect you in any way at all. And that they don't care about what you, about you probably in any other way other than that maybe you're dangerous to them. But that is the go-to issue these days. Like that is the sticking point. That's the weirdest cultural issue to me. That is the sticking point for so many people. A lot of the Trump type people, like that is their big issue. You can talk about everything else; they'll agree with you on on the economy and minimum wage and all these sort of things. But that's the line in the sand they can't draw. That they can't cross. Is that there might be trans people somewhere? Like it's bizarre.
I tell you what, in a way, the harassment by some of the transphobes who lie to get on here, you guys are going to get a little small victory. I have a friendly acquaintance. I don't think we've ever met in person, but we've spoken offline, who you may know as well, and that's Fallon Fox, former MMA fighter who is trans and busted somebody's skull, and that becomes an example that people try to use all the time. Excuse me, lovely and talented, wonderful Ms. Producer down there, down the hall. Can you hear me?
I am here. Hello.
What would you think about right after the election, when we get out of all the deep political stuff? Why don't we book Fallon on a Wednesday night show if she's open to it and available, and just make it, we're going to try to take some of the heavy lifting off of TACIS by letting the transphobes call in and talk to me on Fallon, to me and Fallon on a Wednesday.
But yeah, let's do it.
Sweet. Fallon, if you're listening, you feel free to turn it down and call in whenever you want. I'll reach out to you. Arden will reach out to you. And if you are set up with the tech to come on and do it, and you are open to dealing with the hate mongers, yeah, we'll probably do that.
I haven't met Fallon, but she came into my gym maybe a few months ago. And she didn't come back. I'm not sure what happened. I wasn't there, but some people told me, oh, hey, Fallon Fox came in. She's looking for a place to train. And I wanted to meet her. But it's so funny that you say that, because she's one of the people we get into. There's two people that I always bring up when people start talking, especially in the MMA world, about trans people in sports. They always will show a picture of Fallon Fox. And they go, look at this dude's going to fight, whatever. They always say this stuff. And I go, well, first off, she got cleared and did all the things that she needed to do. And in fact, she has a loss on her record to, I believe, I could be wrong. She'll be able to tell me if I'm wrong. I think it was Ashley Evans Smith, who is a cis woman who I know, who is in the UFC. And Ashley Evans Smith is an okay fighter. I like her a lot. She seems like a nice person. I've met her a few times. But she is an average fighter. I think her record is like 6-6 or something. I don't think she's some world beater. In fact, I believe she got wrecked by somebody else, like one of the other fighters in the UFC. And I believe she beat Fallon. And I'm like, so if this is this all ending, that she's going to run through every woman because she's a trans woman. How did she lose to a 500 cisgendered female fighter, like at her same weight class? Like, it's such a silly argument. And then the other argument that always cracks me up is, you guys are in Texas. There was a trans boy, I believe his name was, I don't know if you guys know, it's a high school wrestler. And he was a trans boy and wanted to wrestle in the boys wrestling. And Texas said, no, you got to wrestle with what you were born. What does it say on your birth certificate? So I'm trying to remember his name, Max or something like that. So they forced him to wrestle in the women's division, and he wrecked all the women in the girls division in high school wrestling, even though repeatedly asking to wrestle on the boys team, and won, I believe, state titles. And then everyone called him a cheater because he was on testosterone and male hormones. And I'm like, you can't have it both ways. You can't say that a trans boy is cheating because he's on hormones, and then say that a trans woman is not affected by any of that and is, it's, they always, when I bring that one up, I go, oh, so then you're okay with this trans boy wrestling girls? Oh no, he was cheating, or she was cheating. He was cheating. They don't ever know what to say. Was cheating, and you're like, right, because he was a boy, and he should have been wrestling with the boys, and you forced him to wrestle with the girls, and it never goes the other direction, and it always kills me. But I'd love to hear Alan talk about it.
Unless anybody thinks that I just come up with ideas and don't ever have any follow through. I literally typed a message to Fallon while Ian was telling that story, and we'll see what we can do. I don't know if Fallon has an interest in this. I don't know if she has the tech and the bandwidth and the time free on Wednesday nights. Who knows? Can't promise any guest, but we're going to do what we can, because I think it would be potentially a good opportunity. I've got, there's a theist on hold, which we'll get to in just a second, but there's an atheist that's been here for an hour and 40 minutes waiting for us. Gabe in Texas, pronouns are EM, has a question about scientific knowledge. So Gabe, you're on with Ian and Matt.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Ian. How you doing?
Just well, thanks.
I debate also myself, and I was asking a Catholic for empirical evidence for his religious beliefs. And they responded to me in a strange way, telling me that they don't have empirical evidence, but that I'm asking for a category mistake, employing the wrong kind of tool, and that scientism is not the only way to find knowledge. How would I respond to that?
Well, they're not
Sorry,
wrong.
I'm a little bit nervous.
No.
Okay.
So when they say it's a category error, when we're talking about a claim about something that exists in a detectable way in reality, empirical evidence is the key foundation there. I'm actually a mild advocate for scientism, but not a hard advocate for scientism, I understand that there's knowledge that doesn't come via way of science. But science has this condition that something needs to be testable and falsifiable before science can actually deal with it. And what religionists would like to say is that God isn't testable or falsifiable from a scientific perspective, but yet they still have good evidence because they have a different system. And so then the answer becomes, okay, demonstrate that your system produces reliable results and that you have evidence within your system that is consistent with reliable results that point to a God. You don't get to just call it a category error, because that's also just special pleading. You're basically saying, my God is immune to scientific inquiry. And if scientific inquiry can hypothetically detect anything that is detectable in reality, if it manifests in reality in a detectable way, it is at least subject to scientific inquiry. Then what you're saying is your God doesn't manifest in any detectable way, which makes me say, how did you detect the undetectable? Are you writing all that down, or did I just blow your mind? Or
Yeah, I'm sorry. If you heard some clicks, it's my typing. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
I get the way I responded to him is the Bible makes specific claims of science that are disproven by modern science. So
Yep.
that's the way I responded to him. Like, you know,
Yeah,
there's no global flood. There's Adam and Eve.
The problem is,
Sorry.
The Bible makes claims that are testable and are not true. The Bible also makes claims that are testable and true. But the fact that there's true and false things in the Bible doesn't tell you whether or not the claim that there's a God is true or false.
Okay.
So that God claim needs its own evidence. I think Ian's got something he wants on here for sure.
I was just, I mean, it's funny because I'm going through this with my daughter right now, who's in college, and I don't want to call her out or anything, but she's in a couple of classes, and she's in a religion class. It's actually an anthropology class, and her teacher's a bit of a woo peddler. Like, he's into, like, you know, what he calls, what's the physics, the Deepak Chopra. Why am I drawing a blank? Quantum. You know how Deepak Chopra always claims to be a quantum physicist or whatever, and he does this quantum physics stuff, and he presents that argument that, well, even though I'm a scientist and whatever, in working in anthropology, whatever, I can't. There are things that are outside of science that are, I guess, metaphysical, and therefore you can't prove them with science, and scientism is wrong and this and that because you can't prove things with science. And I never, I don't understand then how does it affect, if it affects us in the real world, and there are actual effects, like you just said, Matt, then those are testable and those are provable, correct? I mean, if something influences us physically in this realm, in time and space, then it is detectable. And if it's detectable, then we have ways to detect that. If it's undetectable, I don't understand why anybody cares about it.
There's a difference between what we can currently detect and what is potentially or hypothetically detectable. Like, even we figured out and had a good understanding about what, you know, black holes might be like before we had the ability to actually explore and detect it. We had speculation about the cosmic microwave background radiation before we were actually able to look out and get some sort of measurement on it. So there's is it testable in principle, which includes, is it falsifiable? Is there something that would demonstrate that this is false? Like rabbits in the Precambrian, to steal something from, I think, Stephen Jay Gould. But I want to make sure people don't confuse this is testable in principle with this is testable in actuality. There are things that are testable in principle that we currently don't have the technology to test. And we may never have it. And so one of those things is, there's a right answer out there for the question, is there a diamond shaped exactly like my current head on Mars, buried underneath somewhere? That is technically a testable and falsifiable question, because we could go dig up every grain of sand and completely destroy that planet and sift through it. Or there could be lots of other ways to potentially detect it. We don't have the capability right now to actually do that. Although evidently Trump said the other day that if he gets elected, we're going to Mars. And I'm just
Nice.
like, you first.
Well, I guess my question would be then, why would you base your entire life belief on the fact that there is such a diamond on Mars?
Yeah.
You know? I mean, that's the, okay, cool, that there might be, sure. Let's wait. Let's hold out belief in that, and let's hold out basing our entire life and belief system on that until we have a little bit of evidence that might even be the case.
But I will say, Gabe, I want to make sure we've answered your question. And so there are a lot of sources that could potentially produce knowledge. And if I'm not defining knowledge as justified true belief, although that's one possibility, to me, knowledge is belief held to a high degree of confidence that if you were to find out it would be false, it would be worldview altering. And so You get knowledge from the scientific process of inquiry, which isn't some special thing. It is, let's use the best tools, whatever they are, to reasonably evaluate the facts and see if those facts should count as evidence towards a specific proposition. But I don't use science to know when I'm hungry. I directly experience that. That is still something that is in principle testable, because we could do MRI imaging and see what my brains looks like when I'm experiencing hunger and what it looks like when I'm not experiencing hunger. And then, even without me saying anything, you should be able to then detect when I'm experiencing hunger. And so we use that sort of scientific inquiry to confirm the light knowledge that we get from direct experience, to check our memories. I know things because I remember them, but my memory is faulty. I know what I did earlier today directly. And I know, for example, I know somebody loves me. I know several somebodies love me. Does that mean that I am absolutely certain? No, I don't think we can be absolutely certain about anything, but I believe that people love me, and it would be worldview altering to find out that they don't. And so knowledge can come from a wide array of methods. There is no known method that I'm aware of that can be used to reliably confirm anything supernatural, including a God. And so it's not a category error on your part. It is you saying, tell me what your tool is for finding and detecting God, and what evidence it's produced, and how that shows that correlation. Does that help, Gabe?
Yes, he also mentioned that, the miracles, like the miracles of Lanciano and all the other Catholic miracles, point to the validity of his Catholic religious beliefs. That they validate his religion.
Do similar miracle claims from other religions validate their religions?
No.
Yeah. So that's fallacious there, because it's already special pleading. Catholic miracles that he thinks have been confirm Catholicism, but Protestant miracles or Hindu miracles or Scientologist miracles that he, who knows if he thinks it's been confirmed or not, those don't confirm those religions. And so that's special pleading, which is a flawed rationality.
Okay. All right.
Cool. I'm going to get on to some Thea scholars, Gabe, but I appreciate the call.
Thank you very much. Have a good call. Have a good call-in show.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. We have a couple of Theas here. This is interesting because I have no idea. So Damien from New York, Browns he is calling in wants to talk about nature worship. So Damien, you're on with Ian Harris and myself. What is it about nature worship that you wanted to mention?
Hi, yes. Also, thank you for having me on. I've been watching you guys for a little bit. Okay, I know you kind of like when people get to the point of things, so I'll jump right into it.
Sure.
So for me, I used to be very Christian, very, into it. And the thing that pushed me away from it was, truth be told, none of my prayers ever got answered.
No, they all got answered. No.
For okay,
God just fucking hates you.
Or NA, I don't know.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? I would believe that if I believed in it.
No, I'm just teasing. Go ahead, Damon.
So for a long time, it pushed me down kind of to the point where I no longer wanted to be here, and I kind of landed in nature worship, where that is the kind of thing that brought me peace, and less prayer answer, more just bringing my own self peace. And the entire reason for this call is because I've never kind of had it challenged in a way from a secular perspective. It's always been what you're doing is demon worship and all these terrible things, and just I wanted you guys' take on it because I respect you guys' opinion.
Wait, you're asking us to demolish your nature belief from a secular perspective?
If and you still words you say a lot. If it can't stand up to scrutiny, well,
Cool. So, what is it that you worship?
So essentially, it's the moon, sun, and earth, where essentially, because you look at it and you go, hey, you can kind of see, hey, the more you kind of hang out with plants and talk with them due to carbon dioxide, they grow more and things like that. And the moon controls the ocean with gravitation. The sun is our main source of, heat.
What does your worship involve? Like, what does it mean for you to worship those things?
Mostly go out in nature and just kind of hang out. Very kind of hippie, if I'm honest.
If I go out, like I keep and breed a lot of reptiles, and on occasion I like to go out. I don't like I will not take wild caught animals, but I will sometimes relocate. Like tomorrow, I'm going to go relocate a coach whip that's bothering somebody near their house. I'll get it moved. But I like to just go on hikes on occasion and just look at nature. Am I worshiping nature when I do that, or is there something more to it before it would be worship?
And that's kind of why I'm called, because it brings me a spiritual peace, but I'm not quite sure if I'm just feeling peace by just being in nature.
Now, are you applying agency to any of these things? Like, that they have consciousness, or is it you just enjoy nature? I mean, because there are people who do believe that these things have direct effect on them, or that the sun is an entity or something like that. Or do you just enjoy nature? Because I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
And well, I do. Okay. I do believe that, because we know plants do have consciousness. When you talk to a plant, it can kind of hear you.
No, I don't know that.
Oh, sorry. I could have sworn I read that somewhere. I might be wrong about that.
There's plenty of claims about talking to plants and singing to plants and all these other things. That's separate from whether or not we can determine that they have consciousness. But that's just a subtle point. But let's just assume for a second that plants were absolutely conscious. Like we'll say cricket level of consciousness for every plant. I still don't understand what it means to worship them.
Okay, so essentially, in what I practice, I believe that, asking the moon for more guidance will help you have better dreams. Asking the sun to brighten up your day will help you have a better day.
Okay. So you ask the moon for guidance and you think you get different dreams, and you ask the sun for a better day and you get a better day, but not necessarily better with regard to weather, better like you just feel better, or somebody's nicer to you because you asked the sun. Okay. Where's the evidence that worshiping the moon gives you better dreams, and it's because the moon did something?
That's the thing. I don't kind of have anything I can present. All of it's kind of personalized, which isn't good evidence. There's actually no evidence to really present.
I don't care if the evidence is personal. I'm saying at some point, like if I went and said, "Oh, great moon, please give me really good dreams tonight." And then that night, let's say I had good dreams. How do I prove that it was the moon that did it?
I see what I'm falling into. It's more causality doesn't equal. Yeah. Okay.
And also, every day, wouldn't you ask the sun every day to make your day better?
Yeah.
Does that mean you have no bad days?
Try to make a habit of it.
Forrest doesn't have any bad days.
More when I make a habit of doing it, I tend to have a better day. And understand that, like I said, the primary reason why I'm calling is because any kind of pushback I've gotten to this has always been from theists saying it's demons, and honestly, I'm kind of tired of hearing that.
Well, I just got a text message. I'm not going to have to go rescue this coach whip tomorrow because somebody already took care of it and let it go somewhere. So that's what my phone beeping in the middle of the show was. Here's my thing, Damien. There's one thing to say, hey, I have this religion and this particular practice or worship, and it's about me respecting nature. And so I say nice things to the moon and I say nice things to the sun. And so when I evaluate someone telling me that, do I think that what they're doing is harmful? Probably not particularly harmful in most cases, but the line of thinking that occurs in your head that convinces you that talking to the moon will result in better dreams does not seem to be a valid and sound argument supported by evidence. It doesn't seem to be reasonable. It seems to be biased, confused, and ill-defined. And we could test it by having you ask the sun for a better day every day and then track on a scale of 1 to 10 how good your day is. And also do it on a scale of 1 to 10, like overall, but you could also check for your bias by saying, was today better than yesterday? Because if ever you have a day that wasn't as good, then either the sun decided not to do that, or we've got another bit of data that suggests the sun isn't really doing anything to make your day better. And so you can track that data, and until you do, you can't even show strong correlation. So why would you believe something where you can't even show strong correlation? It seems to me like you're wanting to maybe not throw out the possibility of magic or guidance from outside. And so because you can't get it in conventional religions, you'll just attribute it to the sun and the moon and you know, hey, I'm not hurting anybody and I just want a better day and there can't be anything wrong with this. But the more you think it's working, if it's not actually working, the more likely it is you apply that same sort of thinking to other problems. And that's, to me, is where the harm comes in. You know, if somebody wants to get naked and go out and dance in the woods and sing a song to the naiads and the dryads and the fairies and the earth and the moon and the sun, I don't care. I'll fucking take some shrooms and go out and get naked with you. But when it comes to saying this is, I worship and this is what I think happens, I think you've drawn a causal connection where there isn't warrant for one yet. And since even the questions I asked early, like if I go out into nature, I do a lot of herping, you know, when I can. Actually, that's not true. Let me rephrase that. I would like to do a lot of herping, going out and looking for reptiles and stuff has just been ridiculously hot. But on the occasions when I go out and do it, I'm as close to nature as I'm going to get. I have great respect for nature. I work with conservation agencies, U.S. ARC for reptile keepers and other things. At what point does it become a religion? Let's say that I'm absolutely terrified. Let's say I'm a completely irrational atheist who does not want to be labeled with a religion of any kind. At what point does my interaction with nature become your religion?
That's a very good question, one that I actually don't have an answer for.
Well, can I just say, Damien, too, I think, to go off what Matt's saying here, too, I don't have any issue with you going out and enjoying nature, and if it makes you feel good, and that's all great. What I would say is I think you need to examine why you feel you need to elevate it to another level of religiosity, because to me, that's the danger, right? Is that then what's the next thing? If this doesn't work, then what is the next thing that you're going to get religious about? Or if the thinking or your mechanism behind your thinking hasn't changed and hasn't gotten more rational, then you're just going to fall into the same traps that you were with religion at some other point. And I feel like that's the danger. I don't think there's anything wrong with loving nature and being part of nature. But if it has to go to this other level, you're seeking something like the old with X-Files, I want to believe. If you're seeking to believe and create something so that you have that supernatural wonder, then that's a red flag that it's going to present itself somewhere else because your way of thought hasn't changed. And I would just say enjoy that, but also see if you can find happiness or solace in not needing something outside of that, paranormal, something that's outside of reality or truly nature. If that makes sense. Like that's what I would say is your biggest issue, not the nature itself.
Yeah,
I definitely hear what you're saying, and this is why I'm really glad that I actually worked up the courage to call in, because both of you are giving really sound advice and stuff that I can definitely go out and put in the work for. So I appreciate this. And I'm thankful.
Yeah. Also, I'd recommend giving yourself a little bit of slack. You're finding out new things about yourself. You're exploring the world. You're changing. I'm not trying to be dismissive. I'm not going to say, oh, this is a phase and you'll get no, fuck that. Maybe it's not a phase. Maybe this is, fundamentally who you are. The one thing that I'd caution you on is, enjoy exploring and learning about reality. Exercise caution before you tie strongly beliefs about interactions in nature without evidence.
Got it.
But one thing is that, maybe there's some cool stuff in the talking to plants thing, and I might be misremembering. Ian might remember. I think I remember an episode of Penn and Teller's Bullshit that may have been about talking to plants, but where Penn yells at a dog, like, you're so beautiful, I fucking love you. He yells at the dog, but he's saying nice things, and then talks sweetly to the dog. Oh, you're just a miserable little mongrel, and we hate you, and we would cut you open and kill you, and whatever else. And that it's, the dog reacts to the tone. And there may be, one of the things that they did that was pretty good in the Bullshit series is like, if they're testing Ouija boards, they'll just turn the thing upside down with everybody blinded or blindfolded and showing that this doesn't work as well. Yeah, just exercise caution before you start attributing agency or causality in any unidentifiable way with nature. And outside of that, I think all of us, whether we view it as a religion or not, should probably take more opportunities to interact with and appreciate nature, especially since we're likely to kill the fucking planet, where we might be the last couple of generations that can enjoy some aspects of this nature.
Yeah, I mean, if you call that spirituality, all of that.
Yeah, that's the problem for me. I have no idea what spirituality means, and everybody I ask has a different answer. But
yeah, I think that's the issue. But people always go, "Oh, I'm spiritual here." I just enjoy it.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Damien. I wish you well. And if you get more insights into this, call us back.
All right. Thank you so much, and thank you for all the advice. I'm definitely going to apply it.
Thanks so much. So here's the thing. We have one more call on the queue, but I'm going to put out a call here. If you're a theist and you actually want to defend God beliefs, there's somebody who keeps trying to call in just to present presuppositional apologetics. Let me explain this really quickly. Every single version of presuppositional apologetics, by its very nature, presupposes a God, the thing that we're potentially here to have you defend. It's not a defense of a God to presuppose a God. And I am completely disinterested and disinclined to spend time in analyzing arguments that presuppose God. They're all in nuts and bolts. They're the same. Hey, there must be some grounding for reality. Naturalism hasn't given us a grounding, but supernaturalism claims that there's a God that's the grounding, so I'm going to go with that, which is at best an abductive argument, but it's an abductive argument to something else that hasn't been proven. You might as well be saying the grounding for reality is reality creating pixies or fairies, Why not go with that one as your presupposition? Oh, there must be some grounding for logic. There must be some grounding for morality. There must be some grounding for mathematics. There must be some grounding for the laws of physics. And we don't seem to know what they are, so we'll presuppose that there's a God, because by defining God in such a way that it can be the panacea catch-all explanation for anything, we can stick it in anywhere. But you can't solve a mystery by appealing to another mystery, and you don't get to presuppose the very thing that we're trying to have a discussion and demonstrate. So don't bother calling me with presuppositional arguments. Just not going to happen. If you want to call in with evidential arguments, great. I'm here for it. And so because I'm not trying to necessarily end the show early or whatever thing else. There are no theists on the call right now. Actually, there is one now, but call lines are open for theists only. I'm going to clear out the last agnostic or atheist in the queue, and then we'll take theist callers until it's time to do super chats if they call. But Taylor has been very patient. Taylor, Pennsylvania, pronouns are they, them. An agnostic who, wow, how do I encourage others to think more critically, especially with the upcoming election and misinformation going around? I'm having trouble with honest discussions with Republican family members. Well, Taylor, me too. And even without asking Ian, I bet Ian's going to nod right along with this too. So, Taylor, what's going on and how can we help?
Hi, you hear me okay?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, it's my first time doing a call-in show, so I'm a bit nervous. But yeah. I was just curious because after the debates and everything, and I just I don't know, I'm obviously leaning towards Harris. It's kind of like the whole I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my thoughts together. I'm so sorry. It's just I just wish that other people, especially my more Republican family members, they watch Fox News all the time. They're hearing all this misinformation, and it's really discouraging how much they double down on Trump. And I just kind of wish I could talk to them honestly and just be like, hey, well, that thing you just said was wrong. But I always have problems talking when the conversation actually comes up. It's hard for me to get my facts out there. I mix up things, or I don't remember all the details, and then they just kind of gish gallop and say all these other things, and I just feel like I wish I could maybe they're a lost cause though. Maybe I have to try talking to other people that are more maybe undecided, so that, especially because I'm in PA, I feel like I have a bit more of a I'm sorry, it's hard for me to explain, but yeah. Does it make sense I was going anywhere? Because I'm sorry.
Look, I think I know exactly what you're talking about. Especially, I think, were you going to say because you're in PA, was there a swing state argument there that you want to get more people? You need to convince more people.
I feel more obligated to try to kind of push things for the better, because I would be heavily I mean I'm more towards Philly, but I don't want to say the exact county, but I feel I see a lot of Trump signs around my area, and I'm just kind of even if I vote, it's just gonna be one vote. If I could talk to other people, maybe that can slightly, at least get a conversation going, get people to just think about where they're getting their information from, and not just even Trump himself, he'd just be oh, I just watched that they're eating dogs on TV, and it's but he just they don't think critically, they don't do their own research, and it's just really discouraging that we have the facts out there and we just don't all agree on the basics,
Well, I think the problem is that they do their own research, and where they do their research is wrong. I think. I mean, look, I'm the worst person to ask for this because I just get volatile and start. It's really hard for me to keep my calm. But what I'm trying to do on a personal level is I'm a big fact guy. I always try to have the facts on my side before I make any decision. I think that's most of us try, at least. But I think for me, I would ask, the thing I'm trying to do is ask questions and not tell anybody anything. And it's hard, but I think that's the biggest thing you need to ask. If somebody if somebody has an opinion, I would ask them why. And if their response is, because X, Y, and Z, then I think, and that X, Y, and Z are incorrect, then I think you need to ask, well, where did you get that information? Can you show me that? And half the time you'll realize they can't. They'll say, "Oh, I heard it somewhere." Or I've literally had people say, "Oh, I saw a study," and what they saw was a meme. So, and then you can say, "Well, if I had something, would you take a look at that?" And then share that with them. Now you're going to get pushback. The people that are way down the rabbit hole are going to go, "Oh, that's MSNBC. Okay, well here's CNN. Oh, well, that's CNN. Here's PBS. Oh, well that's PBS. Well, here's NPR. Oh, well that's NPR." And then at some point you have to go, "Well, what news or what source would you trust?" And and if the answer is Fox or Newsmax is the only thing I trust, then maybe on some level they're admitting it. But I think you can discuss why are those the only news sources you trust. You can always point out that Fox News has been sued multiple times, and maybe that and had to spend $785 million on the last one, and had to admit that they're not real news multiple times. Maybe that'll help. Maybe it won't. But I think if you ask questions and let them answer them, and then present some places where you can look it up together. Oh, let's look and see if that is really true. Oh, you know what? No, actually, Matt was saying earlier, 49% of the country thinks it's the highest unemployment ever, when it's literally the lowest. When they say, well, it's the highest unemployment ever. Oh, really? Well, let's look at that. And you go to the government website and you say, well, here's from 1980 to now, and you can see the unemployment rates. And hopefully, by asking those questions, they can, maybe they can sit down with you and look up those facts. And it probably won't convince a lot of them, because a lot of times you've gone too far into the cult to change your mind. But I've had people change their minds by asking those questions and showing them the fact and letting them show me the facts. That's, just me.
I'd also recommend tuning into.
Yeah, because sorry.
Jimmy lately has been doing some Cus I Wanna episodes right here on the line, where he specifically invites Trump people to call in. I talked about it at the beginning of the episode. I genuinely think you should watch what Jimmy does and how he does it. But one of the key things is the conversations, whether it's about Trump or religion, tend to follow a very similar process, which is, hey, let's talk about this point. And when that point is well defended by either side, the other side tries to go off to 23 other points. I think the first thing to do is to say, what is your primary issue, or list your top 3 issues. And then take a look at which candidates are actually better on those issues. For example, I have family and friends whose only issue that they care about is abortion. Whichever candidate is opposed to abortion, if they're both opposed to abortion, okay, then maybe they'll have to find a second issue. But as long as you've got Kamala basically saying that she's going to return us to the protections of Roe at the federal level, if at all possible, and Trump's saying that he's not going to veto, or that he would veto a national abortion ban, and yet he's the one that ended Roe, and wants it left to the states, but also wants it to not be legal based on Project 2025 stuff. But if you're opposed to abortion, you should vote for Trump. And so, I mean, that's just a fact. Like, if that's your only issue and you're opposed to abortion, Trump is your guy, not Kamala. That's just the way it is.
Usually,
but if you get somebody to list what they're
that get brought up, like it'll be like immigration and law and order and all this other stuff, where like it's like,
yeah, you're going to have to go study and learn.
They just bring up everything rapid fire.
You're going to have to go study and learn and have some facts ready and figure out what their issues are. Like, for example, I don't know anywhere near enough on immigration. And about, 3 months ago, I think Arden and I were having a conversation, and this will explain to most of you one of the many reasons that I love her. She's like, I don't know enough about immigration. I'm going to go study about it. And so she spent the last couple months digging in on immigration issues and going to, we both have fallen into the ground news cult, so that we get to see news from sites that aren't normally us, but also researching it and finding out that, everybody keeps talking about the southern border, but one of the biggest problems with immigration is that people come in through New York with visas and then outstay their visas. it's a complex situation there. It's like the same thing when you start talking about, oh, it's Israel and Gaza, and Israel's doing a genocide in Gaza. I think there's a really strong case that a genocide's occurring or is nearly occurring or whatever. And you have to figure out, at what point does Israel stop having the right to protect itself, or has it shifted from exercising its right to protect itself to just slaughtering people wholesale when there may not be any justification for it? And so you've got war crimes and war criminals, and everybody ends up at war. It's a complicated thing, and yet it shouldn't be nearly as bad as it is. For example, when Iran launched missiles at Israel today, I'm not a Zionist. I'm not de facto pro-Israel. I have no de facto pro any nation. Netanyahu's a right-wing buffoon who's just seeking retribution left and right. However, I have no problem at all with the fact that we shot down missiles that were going to kill people. Doesn't really bug me. There's other things, if the missiles had hit, that would have bothered me a whole lot more. And so when you figure out what somebody's issue is, stick to that issue. And as soon as they try to move to any other issue, ask them, are we done with that other issue? Have you conceded that point? Because before we move on, and I'm willing to move on, I'd like to know where we stand there. What part of the evidence are you disputing? What part of the argument are you rejecting? Or are you saying, okay, you've made a good point there, I'm convinced there, let's move on to my second issue. And do what I end up doing on here, which is hold their feet to the fire. I'm now at the point where if I've asked you a question and you respond with anything that's not moving directly towards an answer to that question, I will do it again. I'll ask it over and over. I will ask it over and over until I have to hang up on you, because the questions that they don't answer and the things they try to redirect to will tell you so much more about what's really going on in their head than the thing that you just had a discussion about.
Yeah, because a lot of times, like, there'll be a redirect, and they try to like take over the conversation, and sometimes it just gets way over my head, and I'm just like, okay, hold on, and it just kind of becomes chaos sometimes at like certain family gatherings, or like, or even with some people that are more like not even undecided, but just they just don't really like care either way, and I'm just like, but don't you care about like these major, like a lot of these issues at hand, like especially with reproductive rights, like women have died because they couldn't get the health care they needed. And like, I don't want, PA's fine right now, but like, what about a few years down the line? I want to make sure we have our rights, and I feel like it's kind of discouraging when I just hear people saying like, oh, but they're both bad. I'm like, but it's like what you said before. I think at one time I heard you say it's like comparing athletes to cancer. It's like, either way, one is bad. They're both bad, but one's a lot worse. I just don't understand how some people can be kind of just so apathetic about it.
Well, can I also say, though, sometimes people they don't actually know. This happened to me today, 2 hours before the show. A friend of mine had said on a thread, something about JD Vance not voting on anything in his 2 years, that he's got a really horrible voting record. And a right-wing friend of mine said, well, did you know that Kamala Harris was absent for 51% of the votes? And I said, is that true? And I looked it up, and it said 116th Congress, 2020, Kamala Harris was the second most absent senator, and she had only voted on 51% of the bills. And I said, wow, that's interesting. So I went on the website, the government website, and I looked it up, and it's true. She was number 2. Bernie Sanders was number 1. And I said, well, this is interesting. And I looked, and the top 5 were Bernie Sanders, Amy Klobuchar, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, and Elizabeth Warren. Top 5. And then I said, oh, wait a second. It in. No, but what I figured is I said, wait a second. 2020, this particular Congress was during the Democratic primary. All 5 of these were nominees. So the 5 most absent during that short period of time were running for the president. So I said, well, let me look at her other years. So then I looked up 2019, 2018, 2017, and Kamala Harris had only been absent 0.3% of the time.
Yeah.
So I called the person out on their disingenuousness. I don't know. And I said, well, wait a second. You're only looking at a small sliver. And immediately you realize if they're being dishonest or if they didn't know by how they respond. And the response is either, oh, well, I don't care or whatever. Or the response is, oh, I didn't know that. Okay. I'm only talking about this one period of time. Or, oh, I didn't realize that this was a small sliver. I just read this on a meme somewhere and just took it verbatim. And I think that's a good way to look those things up yourself and go, what's the reason behind this? Could there be a reason that I'm not looking at? Could there be a reason that they're not looking at? Are they arguing dishonestly, or did they not know? And I think that's the thing of asking questions and looking up these facts together. You could have come like that. We could have come to the conclusion, oh, wait a second. This is all the people that were running for president during the primary. That's why they weren't available to vote in the Senate. Cool. But the other time she was there, are you still saying that she's as bad as JD Vance, who wasn't running for anything in the last 2 years? So then you can have that discussion and you can determine whether they're being honest or not. And if they're being dishonest, then there's no point in discussing with them, in my opinion. If they are being honest and they're just misinformed, you might sway them.
Mm-hmm. All
I
right.
hope that helps.
Well, yeah, thanks for yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of helped help me put some things in perspective. At least maybe trying to put their feet to the fire a bit more, or trying to just be like, hey, look, this is my side of it. At least hear me out, or at least be willing to take in some the facts before I just I think I'll try to do that. I guess I can only do what I can. And but thank you guys so much for talking with me. And I hope you have a good rest of your night.
Thanks so much.
You too.
You take care. I'm going to say
Matt,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say that you're so good at holding people's feet to the fire. That's a skill.
Well, it is a skill that was developed through 20 years of people trying to evade every point to quote Sabrina Carpenter, my give a fucks are on vacation. Once we've got a question, I know where I'd like to move the conversation in order to get to the best understanding. And when I don't, I ask questions. And it is wild to me that even incredibly simple yes or no questions like, are you saying this? Well, but there's this other thing about this, blah, blah. And then they're going to, so very early on when I started doing this, when I first started hosting Atheist Experience back in 2004, you would have someone start talking and you'd let them present their case. And in the first couple of sentences, they'd say something that either was fallacious or needed clarity in its, needed a definition. So we knew we were talking about the same thing. And out of politeness and standard conversation, I would ignore that and let them go. So they'd talk for about 2-3 minutes, presenting their case. And then I would say, okay, back at the beginning of what you said this, and try to correct it or get clarification. And what would happen is they'd say, no, you misunderstood. Here's what it was. And then they'll spend 3 minutes revising things in order to add something and make it slightly different. And then I'd be like, yeah, but that doesn't explain this. And then they go on for a couple of, eventually they'd present 10 points in a sort of not quite Gallup, but Gish expansion Gallup. And it was like, by the time you got to where you could get them to acknowledge one thing is wrong, then they'd be like, yeah, but you didn't address my first point, which was this. And I'm like, fuck, are we starting all over? So I just decided whether anybody thinks it's rude or not, the instant or pretty close to the instant that somebody says something that needs clarification or definition or what, I'm just interrupting. It just makes things better, saves everybody a lot of time. Because if you haven't prepped, Somebody came up with the better bring your A game phrase probably 15 years ago, where they're like, if you're calling in and you don't bring your A game, you should just wait and call back another time. It's really easy. I don't want to be a dick to anybody, but I will be. All right. There was a caller on hold. We have one theist caller I'm going to get to in just a second. That's Duke. But there was a caller on hold who called in to say, believing in God, if we believe in God, our life gets better, and that's why we should believe. I don't know what happened to that person. I don't know if they gave up and hung up. I don't know if they realized how ridiculous what they were saying was, because my life is better now that I no longer believe in a God. But if you think that believing in God improves life, what part of life does it improve and how? And why does that matter? Because does my life improve if I believe Bigfoot is real just because it makes me happy? Like, I could be one of those people who are, I just think the world's more interesting and fun with magical creatures. So I'll just go ahead and believe the Cottingley fairies. They're cute. Yes, they look suspiciously like magazine cutouts, but I'm just going to believe, and I'm in good company because Sir Arthur Conan Doyle believed, and, he wrote Sherlock Holmes. So this is the type of thinking that goes on with this. And I'm like, if the criteria is, does it make me happy? I don't know that that's a good enough reason to believe something. There's the old adage that a drunk person may be happier than a sober person, but that's not an argument for getting drunk. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. A lot of people get drunk. Maybe that's a good enough argument. But if I care about what's actually true, I also care about whether or not my life's better. And if believing in a God makes your life better, even if there's not a God, then instead of believing in God, maybe you should be looking into why belief in something causes this. Is it placebo effect? I've argued before that I can demonstrate that prayer works. It doesn't work in the sense that there's a God answering it, but if you are in a mine and it caves in and you're running out of oxygen, prayer can save your life, because if you believe in it, it calms you down and you use less oxygen, which means you extend the amount of time you have to be rescued, which increases the likelihood that you'll be rescued. It doesn't mean you're going to get rescued. It doesn't mean there's a God answering it. It just means that you're using less oxygen. If you, in fact, understand that, instead of praying, you might be able to calm yourself so that you use less oxygen. But it might be the case that absent belief in magic, you just can't help yourself. You're just going to panic. And so maybe prayer is the better there, but it doesn't demonstrate that there's a God answering it.
Well, I've never understood, how does one, to me, that seems like self-delusion.
Yep.
If I don't believe, like, even if you were to tell me, Ian, this is empirical, there's empirical evidence, it's a fact, the belief in God will make your life better, make you live longer, make you happier, whatever. Even if I accept that to be true, how do I fool myself to believe something that I don't believe, is what I've never understood. Like, and does the placebo work if I don't actually believe the thing I'm pretending that I believe? Does that work? I don't know. I don't know how one does that. I've never understood that when they give the argument. People give those arguments about, well, if you don't believe, then this will happen, or you'll get punished, and I'm like, well, I can't just pretend. Can I pretend I believe? Then does God know that I'm pretending? That wouldn't he know that? Or do I have to actually believe? And I don't.
Yeah, that's the twofold problem with Pascal's wager. One is that I'm convinced that not only can we not be absolutely certain about anything, but that belief is never a choice, not a simple doxastic propositional choice. It's like, oh, you believe something because you're convinced that it's true, and you can be convinced for good reasons or bad reasons. So your belief is independent of whether or not it's true. So something's either true or it's not, and you can believe it or disbelieve it, whether it's true or it's not. Those are all completely separate. But you can't just say, I've decided, like that song, I have decided to follow Jesus. You can do that, but you cannot decide to believe Jesus is God. You're either convinced of that or not. You can play along. Hell, I can follow Jesus right now in the kind of metaphoric colloquial sense, because I don't think there's anybody to follow now. Is there? Jesus? Hey, buddy, you gonna come down and give me a hangnail, or I don't know, show me the way. But we have one more theistic caller on the line, and I don't know if we're going to get another one, but Duke is calling from Brazil, pronouns are he, him, and he says, everybody worships a God, whether they believe in it or not. Atheists just worship themselves. So Duke, what do you mean by worship? What's it mean to worship?
Let me finish my fucking sentence.
Okay, that had a period in it, so I hung up on him. Yeah, so it's unfortunate that we're not going to get to hear any more from Duke. It's amazing how good I can keep my zen when. So Duke is a repeat caller who got really irritated at me the other day because Duke wants to speak a bunch of nonsense, and when asked for clarity, wants to whine like a little bitch that he's not being allowed to speak. So today, Duke decided to just yell into the phone, "Let me finish my fucking sentence." That is a complete sentence. It had a period. So I hung up on Duke. Duke, you can call back in, but instead of starting with, "Let me finish my fucking sentence," maybe you should say, "Thanks for getting to my call. Here's my point." And then present your point. I don't know, like a rational, civil human being. Then I wouldn't need to interrupt you. The problem is that
opening line. I was like, was he arguing with somebody offline?
No. That was Duke yelling at me to allow him to finish his sentence.
Wow.
And his entire sentence, go ahead and, Arden, you can go ahead and close the lines down. We'll go to supers after this. And huge thank you to Dragon for call screening and to all of our moderators. We're going to move on to super chats in a minute. But I think that you and I can have a discussion that's probably going to be more useful and more productive on Duke's topic than any we could have ever had with Duke. So
I think that's true, just by that one sentence that he completed.
Yeah. So there's this notion that Duke's kind of advocating for, and we can play devil's advocate a little bit, of everybody worships something and atheists just worship themselves. What comes in your mind when you hear stuff like that you're just worshiping yourself?
Well, I think how you were starting it off. What does it mean to worship? That's, I don't know. When I think of worship, I think of devotion or praying to, or I don't even know what the definition of worship is, but I can believe in things like that, which is also a weird one to me. When see people believe, do you believe in this? Because we use that in two different ways. Do I believe this to be true, or do I have trust in, or I believe in my ability to do something? Or when someone says, "Hey, I believe in my kid," that means I want my kid to succeed or whatever, right? But do I believe in myself? Sure, I know I'm real, and I believe in my abilities to get things done that I want to do. Do I worship myself? Like, as in narcissism, sit in front of a mirror and go, "Man, those abs are amazing." I don't is that what, I don't know what that even means.
That's a sentence that's never crossed my mind when contemplating myself. So, we're in different categories there for sure. And I'm in better shape and much lighter than I've ever. My abs are as close to rock solid as they've been in my adult life since I got out of the Navy, and there's still a bowl full of jelly. It strikes me as odd. I remember my mom told me one time that I worship my own intellect. And then there are plenty of people who say that, you worship yourself. For me, not only do I not worship anything, I'm opposed to the concept of worship and reverence. I'm not opposed to admiration. I'm not opposed to respect. I'm not opposed to reverence in a sense of admiration, but not in not in a sense of, feeling submissive to and indebted to and being thankful to, there's people who get out of religions where they're told to pray without ceasing and to thank God and all this stuff. And then they get to maybe like one of our other callers, thanking the sun, because you know what? The sun's done more for me than any God ever. It's probably also giving me cancer, but it's at least done more for me than any God that I can identify. And I don't want to worship the sun.
Like God, though. God gives you the cancer, and then when you pray, takes it away. Come on.
It's worse than that for God, though, because evidently God convinces you you're sick when you're not, and then offers you the homeopathic remedy, because there's actually nothing wrong with you, and they're not going to fix the nothing that's not wrong with you. But it's, I sat here and I thought about it, and I was like, okay, let's assume that he's right. I mean, let's give Duke the benefit of the doubt, even though Duke couldn't even give us the benefit of a sentence that wasn't a screechy little whiny thing right at the beginning. And also, I called somebody a bitch earlier, and I swore I was going to stop doing that. So my apologies and retraction again. I'm still working on curbing my usage of anything that could be construed as a gendered insult. So I'm trying to cut bitch and dick and things like that. Maybe not dick so much, because anyway, sorry for the sidetrack. This concept of worshiping oneself. Let's assume for a second that Duke is right. And Duke worships Jesus as part of the Trinity that is Yahweh, God Supreme. And I worship me. Which one of us is closer to correct? And what's wrong with what I'm doing? And why is it that instead of demonstrating with evidence and argument that your God actually exists, the best you can seem to do is say, well, you worship something too. You're religious too. I know religion's terrible and I know worship's terrible, but you do it too. That's called the tu quoque fallacy, and is a fallacious argument from the get-go.
Well, also, I hear that a lot where people say science is a faith.
Yes.
And that's which isn't true, of course, but I'm always thinking, so you're admitting that faith is a bad thing. If that's your pejorative to science, that it's a faith, then how does that uphold your position that faith is good? Like inherently that it's political. It's the same. It's like when someone says, well, your guy lies too. Whether that's true or not, you're admitting that your guy lies. If you're saying that science sucks because science is a faith, then why are you defending faith? If you're admitting that faith is not a good thing and that's why science sucks, like it's a very interesting argument. But why would? At least I'm real.
Yeah, and let's assume that I worship myself. Like, oh man, Matt, you are so awesome. I mean, to some degree, isn't that what some of those positive thinking life coaches are doing? Is telling talk yourself up. Come on, talk yourself. You can do it. If you're in the gym and you're getting weak and you just can't push, come on, you can do it. You can do it. Talk yourself up, as if the talking will do it, because it kind of does. Not really, but it kind of does. So if I can actually do more than I initially think I do with some encouragement, what would be wrong with worshiping myself in the sense of encouraging me to do more and be better? And how could it possibly be better for me to worship a God that is so absent as to be confused with non-existent, and whose defenders can't produce a case for it, and instead just want to point and say, you're just as bad?
Right.
I don't see how a God improves that.
But also, to me, so there's two things here. Number one, I do know a lot of atheists that are narcissists. I know not any more than any other group of demographic of people, but
We know
I
some
do
of the
know.
same ones.
Yeah, I'm sure we do. That doesn't mean that atheism is a narcissistic position, and I would argue, in fact, the opposite. That I would feel on some level, and again, it depends on how you got to atheism, because there are people that got to atheism because they rejected their pastor, or the priest molested them and therefore religion is bad and they call themselves atheists. And there are people that got there through skepticism and rational thought and critical thinking and evidence and science and whatever. There are different ways you get to atheism. But in general, from my perspective, atheism is a less narcissistic belief system in that I feel like thinking that you're the center of the universe and that you were created by this all-powerful thing, this all-powerful creature that is the center and the controller of the universe and everything in it, and we were just created on this tiny planet for us because we're so amazing. That feels far more narcissistic. I mean, at least on the surface, it feels far more narcissistic to me than at least how I got to. Well, I've always been an atheist, but how I've always thought of it is that we're just here for a brief period of time, and we are what we are, and however it got here, we may not know completely yet, and we have some pretty good ideas, but does it matter? And I'm just going to live the best life I can for me and the people around me while I'm here. And that's all it is. And I feel like that's a less narcissistic belief system on the surface. And it's not has to speak to the individuals, but it's odd to me to say, well, atheism is self-worship, which to me is narcissism. That's just an odd claim in and of itself, right? I mean, without talking about individuals.
It is. I don't know why the hell did we wait so many years for you to come on and hang out with me for a little while? Because this has been oodles and gobs of fun. We're going to read some super chats, and what we end up doing is we're only going to read the ones that are $10 or over, and I tend to alternate where I'll read one and you read one, and then that will inspire other people, because some of these people, believe it or not, they're going to say something there that needs clarification, and some of them will give another $10 just to clarify it, and somebody else will give $10 to tell why they're wrong. So this is one of my favorite things here. And by the way, if you all haven't shown your love for Ian being on here, super chat's a good way to do that. But I want to make sure, before we're just reading stuff for the monies and everything else, huge thank you to both our call screener and our moderators, and Arden for producing. But for each and every one of you who are watching and participating, including the people that irritate the shit out of me and are incredibly bad callers, we need some of that for the show. And this isn't just, give me money, although come on, you can give some money. And I have my own Patreon as well, patreon.com/atheist debates, putting up 4 videos a month there. Ian will be able to push his stuff as much as he wants to as well. You can go to linemerch.com. But here's the thing. The best thing you can do is to chat, click like, click subscribe, and then go tell other people. Because when you are having your difficulty arguing with Cousin Joe, and he wants to argue about the satanic influence of Halloween and how it's the devil's stepping stone to try to take your mind off Christmas because it's around the corner and that's the true meaning of the world and Jesus, you tell Cousin Joe, he can call into the line, talk to us, and explain why he thinks that. And then you don't have to sit there feeling all frustrated and anxious. You get somebody who wants to keep taking you to church. Go and take notes and walk up at the end of the service and thank the preacher and say, you're an atheist. You were inspired to go there by some friends. You took plenty of notes. You have lots of questions, and ask him if maybe he'd be interested in calling into the show to explain the things that he taught in church services. I used to go to churches early on in 15, 16 years ago. I'd go to churches on Sunday mornings to find out what they were teaching, and then go at 4:30 on Atheist Experience and talk about what I heard about in church, so that I was honestly addressing what believers were saying and not just saying, I heard this about this Bible church, and here's this dude over here who looks a lot like me, who's also into snakes, except that he's handling copperheads and rattlesnakes in his church service because he didn't understand that Mark 16:9-20 is a forgery. And then he got bit and died. And by the way, his son got bit as well. I don't just need the fringe of Christianity. I need believers of a variety of religions who are willing to actually defend their beliefs, including their thoughts on, I'm putting this in quotes for amusement, transgenderism. We're willing to take on all of that stuff. You don't have to lie to get through, and you don't have to start by whining about how you didn't get to finish your thought last time. I've been doing this a while. If you didn't get to finish your thought, you probably fucked up. But here we go. $10 from Jared Bear Fuller. If atheists generally reject claims that a God exists, then shouldn't faitheists be described as those who reject the desire to follow evidence? I get what you're saying, Jared Bear, and would largely agree, except that, as Ian pointed out very astutely earlier, a lot of people come to atheism for a lot of different reasons, and including bad reasons. And some of them even been high profile individuals. Like I remember an individual who came out at the Reason Rally and became Teresa McBain and became sort of the atheist darling for a little while because she was a former pastor. And then, of course, she was involved in a scandal and decided she was going to go back to Jesus because she missed the music. So if you have bad reasons for stuff, it can make it incredibly difficult to put, it would make a mistake to put you in a kind of vaunted position. But yeah, faith is okay.
Shall I read this one?
This one is yours.
Okay, $9.99 from Greg Markowski. First Wednesday I've off in a while. Happy to catch a whole show live.
Awesome. Greg is one of the first people to hit Super Chat every time. And I've had the great pleasure of getting to hang out with Greg and eat a meal with him up in, well, I'm not going to out you as to where you live, but having been there and getting to interact, it was good. We like everybody here who's supporting. And speaking of regular, $10 from Monkey, a typewriter, who's also wrenched and doing sterling work in our thing here. Steven Seagal once told a stunt coordinator that he had an immunity to being choked out. The coordinator replied this was bullshit, and Seagal let him try. Steve was choked to a brown pant.
So actually, I know this story firsthand.
Cool.
From what I've heard,
firsthand, you were there?
Well, I said firsthand from the guy who did it.
So okay. Second.
So yeah, I guess secondhand. So yeah, but from the person who, the stuntman who did this is a man named Judo Gene LaBelle. He just died a couple years ago. He's a legend, amazing person. He was Ronda Rousey's coach. He at one point he's also the guy that Brad Pitt's character was kind of very loosely based out in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because he also choked Bruce Lee, and they became good friends because Gene's a monster of a man and he's a crazy person, and just in a good way. And he's story
like twice the size of Brad Pitt.
Yeah, much bigger than Brad Pitt. But the way I heard it was that that Steven said, yeah, he couldn't be choked out, and that Gene choked him out, and then when he woke up, he choked him out again. And again, the way I heard it was that he said, I understand. When he woke up the second time, he said, I understand why you choked me out because I was running my mouth. He said, but why'd you choke me out a second time? And he said, so that you couldn't say it was a fluke. That's the way I always heard it.
I am not in any way fat shaming Steven Seagal, but I would be willing to bet that he's slightly more immune or slightly closer to immune from being choked out now than he was when he was fitter, because there's some extra padding around his neck that might help. And who knows, maybe that's part of his defense strategy. I have no idea. $20 from Eddie Anunson. The moderators ask Walls which month of 1989 he was in Hong Kong. I don't like the way he danced around with his answer, but I'm not sure what the purpose of the question was. Am I missing something? I don't like the way he danced around the question either. Basically, in shorthand, Walls had said that he was there during the, democracy riot thing in Tiananmen Square. And he was actually not there until several months later. And I think that's probably close enough to the events. Like Dawkins and I did an event in Vancouver just days before the 2016 election. I think it would be okay for me to say, well, it wouldn't be accurate. Okay. But if I said, yeah, I was in Canada for the 2016 election, that would be erroneous, but it would be close to what was actually happening because it was a day or so either way. I think they were trying to give him an opportunity to say, yeah, I phrased that poorly. I probably embellished it, but I was there a few months after that and was teaching people and learned. I think there was a really good way to handle that question. And Walls, who has handled so many questions so well over the last month and a half, I think he really fumbled that one. I agree with you. And I think their purpose was to maybe give him an opportunity to explain. There's not much that they're going to catch him on that's a problem. There are people who have gone after his military record, and there's people who have gone after subtle little things in his personal life, and then this. And so I think they just picked that one as an opportunity. I'm going to bet that there was an agreement. I wouldn't be surprised if there was an agreement to stay hands-off military record, because it might not work for either one of them to be challenging the other's military record. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's
the
best I got for you.
Yeah, that would be crazy. I think, honestly, I can't say everyone, but I think the majority of people embellish stories or have embellished a story at some point in their life. I don't know anyone that hasn't. I mean, I
did one tonight.
And I'm sure it's a lot better of a story to say, I was there when the event happened. Even if you're there, like you said, around that time, it's still a lot of tension, a lot going on, but it makes the story better. So I'm sure he said it one way at one point that way. And then the next time he said it, he had to say it that way. And it was probably been said for whatever effect, because you don't know what it's like until you're there. And there's, I was there when the tanks and whatever. And then now it's hard to back off that. I do think that we all most of us have a hard time saying, yeah, I embellished, that was bad. And I think they might have been giving him a chance. It would have been really cool had he said, you know what, guys, I was there during the time. I embellished the story a little bit more for effect by saying this. Probably not the right thing to do, but we've all done that a little bit. But when do you hear somebody do that? I haven't heard it on a political stage.
I will say the impressive thing. So I did it tonight, but the difference is I hate when I catch myself even slightly embellishing stuff. So I'll try to correct it. So when I was like, oh, I like to go out, I go out herping all the time. That's a lie, because it's too fucking hot and I'm too lazy to go out herping as often as I'd like to. So I corrected all that. But what's interesting to me is when Trump lies and gets called out for it, it's deny, project. It's not even an attempt to fumble towards an explanation. It's a genuine, I don't give a fuck if you think I lied. And by the way, I might grab you by the pussy just because I can, and then claim that I never said it or did anything. But when you watch Tim Walz, his fumbling and how poorly he answered that question is exactly what I would expect from someone who was psychologically coming to grips with the fact that they said something that was misleading, and it bothers and terrifies them what people will think of them because of that. You can kind of watch him processing this, and that makes him more real, and to me, generally more trustworthy than the blank-faced narcissist standing there denying the facts of reality over and over again.
Right.
So yeah, I wish he'd handled it differently, but Walz is one of my favorite people running for office right now.
I love him.
This one's you, I think.
Oh, okay. $10 from, oh man, is it Alyssa Silva?
Alyssa.
Okay. I was so happy to hear Walz call out Vance for demonizing mental illness on the gun violence problem. As someone with mental illness, I'm tired of being made to feel like I am the problem.
Yep. And you're not the problem. Taylor Swift's the problem.
And not only that, let's say that mental illness is a factor, which it might be. There, on some level, you could say, oh, maybe we shouldn't give people with certain mental illnesses weapons of mass destruction. Okay. The people that use that argument are the people that don't want to do anything about mental illness. That's the thing I find so insane, is that you're going to go, well, it's not guns, it's not this, it's mental illness. Oh, cool. Well, what do you want to do about mental illness?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah. That is That is the right point, and easily my favorite. And you know what? I've heard you say that. I've heard some of my other friends say that. I've heard plenty of people make this point, and just like it's a great point. Doesn't seem to change anything, and nobody seems to care. Just like there's going to be another school shooting coming up in the near future, and we're all going to get outraged about it for a day, and then we won't be. And it's just mind-boggling at what you can rationalize as not a big enough deal to focus on, while you're worried, while you're talking about not only did Vance stigmatize or add to the stigmatization of mental illness, but he also went after Haitian immigrants who are here legally and essentially lied about them, then acknowledged he'll make up stories if he needs to get the media to focus on stuff. And then these people, they're suing. There's a group representing the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, who are suing them. And I hope every Haitian makes enough money off Trump that they never have to work again, and that Trump has to start eating dogs and cats. Well, all right. I like dogs and cats enough for him to not actually eat them, but that he starts considering it because he's broke.
Well, really quickly with that too, it's like that whole thing started with originally, and I'm not saying this is correct, this is also incorrect, but it started with that the Haitians were taking geese from a local pond or something like that. And I mean, there was one story of some lady that was not an immigrant, that was, I think, a white lady that or some woman that they thought was eating a cat or something else. Somehow that got conflated and merged in the same story. But the trope of illegal or of any immigrants, even legal immigrants, eating ducks and geese from ponds, I remember that in the 80s, where I grew up in Santa Cruz, with the Chinese people stealing the ducks out of the local ponds for a Chinese restaurant or something to that effect. And it was just a racist stereotype that was just fear mongering. But that's been like a story, a trope that's gone around to attack migrants, typically Asian migrants, for quite a while. So it's odd to me because it's not even a new story. It's a really old hacky racist trope that has been going around forever, and then it just somehow magically morphed into cats and dogs and pets, and from geese in a pond, which by the way, when I was a kid, my uncles used to go duck hunting all the time. I don't know that was that weird, but I mean, for me it is, because I don't like hunting. But it's such a strange thing that we know the geese in the pond thing, or the ducks in the pond thing, is an old racist trope. We've known this I've known it at least since the 80s, and and so it's odd to me that it morphed into the dog and cat thing, and that it's so obvious, and yet they're still doubling down on it. And it's very interesting to me that's just not called out left and right, and that they keep that, like we said with Walls. Why can't they just go, you know what? It was a mistake. The story got out of control. We were wrong. It would be done.
Yep. $10 to Jerry Fuller. Tomorrow would have been my mom's 62nd birthday. She passed away as a result of cancer last October. She died in my hands. She was there for my triumph, and I was there for her roses. I'm so sorry to hear that you lost your mom at such a young age. And really, it's so weird what I find it reminding me of how old is old. Like, I remember being a kid thinking 30 was old, 40 was old, 50 was old. Now I'm over 50, 60's looking pretty young. And I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Like my parents are older than that. It's just, yeah. Very sorry for your loss. Thank you for celebrating that, and for remembering your mom's birthday and sharing with the rest of us. It is one of the areas where the secular community still has a ton of work that needs to happen. So I've done this for more than 20 years. I was, before any of you ever saw me on on atheist shows. I was already writing stuff for a couple of years before this. And I've had the pleasure of interacting with some of the brightest minds in the secular community, including a ton of people that none of you have likely heard of, because they don't do podcasts. They're not going to do a debate. They're going to go to a convention, but they're not going to be up on the stage. And if they have great thoughts on this community, and I've watched the broader secular community go from having what seemed like a convention every month or every other, like I was doing 6, 8, 10 conventions a year for a period of time. Now there are fewer of them. And when we were doing them regularly, there were a lot of things that were discussed. How do we keep this from being an old white guy movement? How do we bring in, how do we make sure women and people of color are feeling welcome and participating? Then there's pushback from some of the old dudes that have been in the community for a long time. And I literally had people explain to me that either the atheist community of Austin or the atheist community in general was getting too diverse and too gay. You guys are focused on gay issues too much. And it was really an injection of humanism that had us focusing on rights in general, and the rights that were most often being targeted were the rights of the LGBTQ community, the rights of women. And so those became points. And people, but this is supposed to be about God. We shouldn't do anything at all except talk about whether or not God exists. And I'm so happy that those people lost, and that the movement doesn't feel the need to have 53 conventions a year. We have the option to gather and share stories like this. And so I don't know if Jared and I have ever met in person. And yet there's a name there that I recognize from the participation here, so that I feel at least some connection to someone who lost their mother. And that makes me, when am I going to have to deal with that? My mom's still alive. That's not going to always be the case unless Jesus takes her up to heaven before she dies, like she thinks is going to happen. But it's a wonderful thing about this community that there are genuine connections, and they're just reinforced when we do have the opportunity to get together. I know COVID put a big damper on a number of interactions that people were going to be doing. I was supposed to be doing a debate at Oxford Union, and COVID stalled that. And of course they're behind and haven't rescheduled, and who knows, they may never want me again, especially considering some of the people that I've called out. But thanks so much for sharing, Jer Bear. It's great to be a part of this community here.
Me? $10 to imitrate. Nice little. Anyway, I am an e-trader. Unwanted pregnancies are the result of lust and violence, Satan's attributes. Christians should demand termination of unwanted pregnancies instead of bringing Satan's army into the world.
That is an interesting pro-abortion argument. And by the way, I'm pro-abortion. I'm not just pro-choice. I'm pro-abortion. And by that, I don't mean that I think, we should be advocating for abortion or anything else. No, I'm tired of people saying abortions should be safe and rare. No, they should happen exactly as often as they need to happen. I'm not going to shy away from it. It's the best thing. Just like we are starting to look at abortion in the same way that we used to look at divorce. Divorce used to be a shameful thing. And then Loretta Lynn sang, about being a divorced woman. And so did Tanya Tucker. And, or it was, nope, I'm thinking Harper Valley PTA as well. But when people started actually talking about it and reducing some of the shame and stigma from it, and recognizing some people got married for the wrong reasons at the wrong time. Some people got married for the right reasons at the right time, but things have changed. And in reality, staying together for the kids has often caused as much harm, if not more harm, than it alleviated. And so we've changed how we think about divorce. And it's not like we think there's too many divorces. There should be exactly as many divorces as there are people who no longer want to be married. And no God or government should stand in the way of someone. My ex-wife is still one of my absolute best friends. I absolutely, we had our issues. I want nothing but good things for her, and we talk fairly frequently. Divorce was the best thing for us, even though there was a period of time where neither one of us would have even given it a thought. So,
and also divorce is also, I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with marriage, but divorce is also something that is necessary because of the norms that we've created through marriage.
Yeah.
My wife and I were together 13 years before we got married. And on some level we were like, does it even matter? Like, what is it? I mean, it was like, okay, so we can have a party and so that our relatives can feel cool. And so that we can get the benefits we need legally with insurance or whatever. But the reality of it is, people have girlfriends and boyfriends and whatever, and they break up. They're together for many years and they break up, and there's no big deal about it. They just go their separate ways and move out of the house or whatever the deal is. It's only because we've added this marriage to it that divorce is a thing. And it's like, and I'm no problem if you want to get married and share your assets but the fact that we have that it's a legality is the reason that we need a legal way to undo it. So it's kind of, and same thing with abortion. I mean, abortion comes down to all the talk about life and all this sort of stuff. And we all know it's not true because we know they don't care about the baby once it's born. It's really just a puritanical way to control women specifically, but also people from having casual sex. I mean, that's what it always comes down to. When you boil it down, they'll be like, well, then don't have sex. But they don't really believe that because they're all having sex and they're all, watching porn.
Most of them they're having secret gay sex, and that's not going to get anybody pregnant.
Right. True.
$10 from Sheridan Bernasconi. Jack Smith is going after Trump, but none of his new testimonies won't still if he wins. So vote blue. Great show tonight. Did I read that wrong? Jack Smith is going after Trump, but none of his new testimonies won't still if he wins. I know that there was paper. I talked about it, I think, earlier, that there was stuff released where, and it may have been Steve Bannon that was saying make them riot, but I haven't confirmed that yet. So I think it was still just person 5 or whatever.
Did you mean won't stick? The testimonies won't stick if he?
The testimonies won't stick if he wins. That could be right. Thanks, honey.
Yeah, and that's it's horrible it's crazy that he can just appoint a new head of the DOJ and just make them all go away. Like that is crazy to me that even an option in our society. But back again, $10 from Metrate again. Metrader.
I am E-Trader.
I'm E-Trader. I got it. Yeah. Hello. I'm also dyslexic, if that helps. I am E-Trader. It says that right there. God, I'm not very smart. Could you discuss why it's constitutionally allowed for school vouchers to allow the teaching of religious doctrine with taxpayer dollars?
This is a strange question because neither of us are lawyers, but it's not allowed for school vouchers. So, I think I know what you're saying. There are private schools that vouchers would allow people to send their kids to where they do teach religious doctrine. So that ends up being taxpayer dollars. I can't tell you why that's legal other than to say, I think it's because it has not been successfully challenged. I had a friend who unfortunately has died, he was a libertarian, but he was advocating for a specific type of voucher structure, a progressive voucher structure. And his proposal would also be that those vouchers couldn't be used for schools that were teaching religious doctrine. So yeah, I'd have to look into it more on what's technically being allowed right now, because I'm not sure. We're trying to get a hold of Andrew Seidel. He was going to come back before the election. We're not sure if that's going to happen, but I will try and ask him.
And even if they do challenge it now, will the Supreme Court allow it? Of course they will.
Now is not the time to be challenging some things with regard to church-state separation, because the court doesn't give a shit about precedent, and we would be establishing bad precedent. I remember when this discussion came up, when someone was suing to get In God We Trust removed from the money, and there was a concern that not only were they going to lose that case, but in losing it, they would set a bad precedent that would live on, and we needed to wait for a time when the court was more amenable to setting those things. But now the court doesn't care about precedent when it doesn't mix with their ideology. So
not at all.
$10 from Gnostic Academy. The etymology of gender comes from the word genes. To claim gender isn't connected directly to one's genes is to literally deny the meaning of the word. Sex and gender are the exact same thing. Well, I'm sorry to inform you there, $10 from Gnostic Academy, but sex is more complicated than that. And it's not just about genes. And also, you don't have any access to what someone's genes are, and they might not either. So you're not going to be able to run around saying, ooh, you can only use this bathroom if you can demonstrate that you have 2X chromosomes, because then what do you do with people who are XYY or whatever else? And also, your argument about the origin of a word is completely irrelevant. Bad used to mean bad, but languages are bitch. Ooh, there it is. That's it again. I got to scrub that. Language is our plaything. My apologies. And it's there for us to use however we want. So the new usage of gender is at the intersection of biology, psychology, and sociology. I'm sorry that you haven't kept up with, modern thought on this, but we're not beholden to what things originally meant. Things can change. That's the way this works. So no, sex and gender aren't the exact same thing.
Sure.
And even if they were, you would have no way of showing what someone's sex is without some sort of invasive test that bodily autonomy would prevent you from demanding or requiring.
Okay, can I ask too, I guess I don't want to ask, because we found this when the I'm forgetting her name, Khalifa, the boxer that was genetically female, right? And all of these people, I've gotten into so many arguments online, and they'd be like, well, her chromosomes say this. Well, first off, we don't even know if that's true because we don't know if that test was real. But even if it was true, I would say, so chromosomes are what matter now? I thought it was what's downstairs because we have intersex and we have all sorts of different stuff. I go, but there's also so many variations of chromosomes. And I literally had multiple of these people say, well, it's a complicated issue. Yeah, that's what we've been saying. So this idea that it's like, first it's just how you present. Then it's your chromosomes. Then it's like, well, when those are ambiguous or we're not sure, then it's a combination of those. And then it's what you feel like you look like to me and all these different things. But my big question is always, we, like you said, Matt, we've changed the language. Language evolves, and what we have, the definition we have for gender is different than the definition we have for sex. If you disagree with that, if one disagrees with that, then I would say on some level, okay, that's fine. But what I'm talking about when I say gender is defined as such. If you don't want to call that gender because you think gender already has a definition, what would you call what I'm talking about? Then come up with a name for that. We'll call it that. If it's a social construct or, like you said, multiple different things, where biology and sociology and psychology meet. Okay, if we want a new name for it, maybe we can come up with a new name for it. But I just don't think they're arguing semantics. I think it's nonsense when they do that. Oh, but the name, it's already got a definition. Fine, but we're not talking about the definition. We're talking about the thing that we know as gender. What do you call that then? And that's what we're discussing. You can discuss semantics all you want, but we're discussing this thing.
Well, actually,
regardless
this
of
this person shouldn't be discussing semantics at all, not just all they want, because as it turns out, semantics is about what words mean or how they're used. But you probably shouldn't be talking about etymology because a quick search shows that you are in fact wrong and that the origin of gender comes from the Latin genus, and that is not even the same origin as the word gene. Gene is of Greek origin, not Latin. And the word gender is derived from the Latin genus, which means race, stock, kind, or gender. It is just a grouping. So you're wrong about the etymology of the word gender. You are wrong about the etymology of the word genes. And you are wrong about sex and gender being the same thing. You are wrong. Congratulations, Gnostic Academy. You with your Lord Jesus Christ icon and thinking that you're Gnostic and teaching anybody anything. You are officially the first person today who's engaged in fractal wrongness. You are wrong at every conceivable resolution at which you can possibly be wrong. Thanks for the money. Give me some more. This one's yours.
$10 from Mr. Borakua. Again, 10. Bad with these. Got ready to watch a show. Tired body decided it wanted to sleep in my office chair. Woke up to a dishonest dosage, the guy we had earlier, harping on trans issue. I'll watch back. But I have some money, and a good evening.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the support. I hope you enjoyed your nap. Get more naps and go out and see some nature. $20 from Zerth Moonpaul. William Mattis, they, them here. Hi, Matt. Hi, Ian. Hi, William. Hope you guys are having a good day these days. I'm doing pretty good. Not been hurting as much. And D&D start back up at the library. That's all. Enjoy yourselves. We will definitely enjoy ourselves. I did it. I enjoyed myself. I hope Ian had fun.
I more than I should have, maybe. No, this is really fun. I'm glad you had me on. Why do I get all the ones that I can't pronounce? I'm just $20.
Net Girl Jimmy. How hard is that?
Net Girl Jimmy. Okay, cool. It just looks like one word, and that's screwing.
I know it looks terrifying, and then I looked at it and I was like, "Oh no, that's Net Girl Jimmy."
Born in Ithaca, New York, had to move to South Carolina at 13. Found out that I had no God. Have lived below the Mason-Dixon ever since. Reasons. Just a thank you for making me feel not alone all the time. I'm 52.
Well, we're very happy that you no longer feel alone all the time. If anything else, I've said it many times before. Single most important thing that the atheist and secular community needs to focus on is the community. Eventually, we can get beyond just community. We can do more storytelling and attempting to change the world around us. We're not a unified block. We're not a unified block of bloaters. We're not a unified block of thinkers. And perhaps we shouldn't be. Although ideally, I think if there's a right answer, it should make people agree on thoughts and be more aligned. But building community is important. And a lot of people are in positions where they're never going to get to go to convention. They're not going to get to come down and hang out when we do, dinner at whatever place, or they're not comfortable with it. They're not physically able to, they're not financially able to. And so being able to provide a place where we can virtually get together so that some people feel less lonely is a really, really good start.
Absolutely.
I got an easy one. $10 from Beer Patio. Thank you, Beer Patio. I greatly appreciate the support.
Want to do this one too? All right. Well, $10 from Mr. Han. Here's some love for Ian, although he's an obvious reminder that I need to get back to the gym.
See?
Thank you.
Good stuff. Thanks so much. $10 from Clever Name 2. Sometimes people give money just to hear hosts read messages that don't seem to say anything. Facts. I mean, that's a fact. Thank you so much.
And $25 from Godfrey N. Good. Aloha. A very devout coworker and I agreed to exchange videos explaining each other's position on religion. Originally, I only wanted him to see how easily theistic arguments are debunked, but I can be persuaded otherwise.
There's an additional.
Okay. If you could only show one video to a theist that debunks theism or shows how bad religious arguments are, what would it be? FYI, he sent a link titled Creation, Believe It or Not, Part 1. Mahalo.
Well,
man, one video.
Do you have a video that you would direct people to? I have one of my favorite books to recommend, just in general, not necessarily related to religion, is John Allen Paulus's Innumeracy. But on religion, I need to get a hold of Guy P. Harrison. We're still friends on Facebook. I'd love to get Guy on to talk. Guy wrote a book many years ago called 50 Reasons People Give for Believing in a God. And apart from one little tiny thing that for fun, I kind of argued with him about, the book's outstanding. It's a collection of little essays on odd points. I would love to see, 50 reasons is a lot. but like a video on the top 10 of those. Maybe I'll get together with Guy and see if he's shot that or anything else. I can't think of a video, like even one of my own that I would just.
I would say, look, I always say this to everybody. I've been an atheist for 53 years. I've always have been. So there was never like a deconversion or any moment for me. But I when I grew up reading books, I loved reading Bertrand Russell's Why I'm Not a Christian. But I hear people, because I like to talk to people about deconversion because it's interesting to me. And I do know that the one I get all the time, book wise, or it was Sam Harris's the Letter to a Christian Nation, which I've heard people say that one, that you can get it. It's really short, and you can get it on audiobook, and it's very short and it's to the point. But honestly, people, like I said, I talk to people all the time. Being a comedian, I'm always doing shows with people that aren't atheists, and they always come up to me and they go, what can I hear, or what can I read, or what can I do? And I've told you this before, Matt, people come up to me sometimes, often younger people, and they'll be like, I was raised a certain way, but I started watching back when it was Atheist Experience, and I would see Matt Dillahunty. People would always go, do you know Matt Dillahunty? And I'd say, yeah. We've done some stuff together. And they go, because he did this one, and it would always be a different one. But there's so much that you have on there where you've just had a caller on whatever show it is, and systematically just broken it down to where there's no air. There's no air in the argument, and you're really good at that. And I can't point to one video, but I would say that from the people who come up to me to ask me questions about this, I get you, and I get Sam Harris's Letter to a Christian Nation constantly. So find something of Matt's online.
There you go. I'm the best. I'm the mostest awesome. I keep getting it verified every time I tune out all the people who say I'm not.
You do worship yourself.
See? $10 from Monkey Typewriter. Thank you so much, Ian. That's fantastic. But can you confirm or deny that he pooped himself? You were fantastic on the show, and your shirt is dope. It won't look as good on me, but where's it from?
Oh, okay, cool.
Racism shirt.
Yes. So this was going to bring out a whole other topic of discussion that I probably don't need to get into right now. But first off, I cannot confirm that. I've heard that story. When I heard it from Gene, he didn't mention that. So I've always thought that was nonsense. And Gene is dead, so he's died a couple years ago. So I can't confirm with Gene anymore. If not, next time if I run into anybody in his circle, I think his wife is still around, then I will try to ask if anyone knows if that's true, and I will have to report back to you on that. As for my shirt, my friend Marv Mack made this shirt, and it's a long story, but it's he has a club called he's down here in LA called Club Soulside, and another one called Trojan Lounge. And if you see, it is a laurel leaf, like the Fred Perry shirts that unfortunately the Proud Boys like to wear now. But this actually comes from
the laurel. We greet you with a laurel and hearty handshake.
Hearty handshake. But anyway, so it's Marv Mack. Marv Mack. You can find his stuff. He sells this merch for his clubs that he does in LA, Club Soulside and Club Trojan Lounge, which is old reggae and ska. And this actually comes from skinhead culture, but not the racist stuff that you think. The original '60s skinhead from England. That long story. So if you ever want to look into that old youth cult from the '60s, '70s, and '80s, that's what this comes from. Trying to people who are in that culture and that loving that type of music, always trying to say we're not racist. It's the crazy people that tried to take our look or whatever. So that's where this comes from. If you get a chance, he sells them.
Awesome possum. $10, Jason G. I believe a strong case can be made for worshiping the earth itself. Happy for you to call in and make the case. I get what you're saying. I certainly think there's a stronger case for worshiping the earth than any god I've heard of. But I don't know that there's a strong case to worship anything. And I guess my real problem here is this. It's not so much that I'm opposed to worship in every regard. I kind of am. But I think that my feeling on this is because any thing that would truly be deserving of worship could never expect or demand it, because expecting or demand it would automatically move you to whatever category makes you unworthy of worship. Certainly, the notion that you're going to punish people who don't worship you definitely disqualifies you. That's in the he hits me because he loves me category of terrifying bullshit.
$10 from Jamnik06. Not as many people are named Lance these days. In medieval times, they used to lance a lot.
Oh,
bad dad jokes. Sorry, not sorry. More Ian Harris on the line, please. Fire Jimmy. Team. All these are hashtags. Team
I was genuinely. I mean, you guys know me. I love having people on that I think are great, that have things to say. I don't know what the fuck took Ian and I so many years to do a show. I'd love to invite him back on, but if I have him on and all it's going to do is spawn more bad fucking puns, then I'll pass.
Yeah, sorry. I'm gonna have to bow out on that one myself. I can't. We can't have the bad puns.
See, Jamnik, you went and ruined it. No, I'm teasing. $10 from Jer Bear. Here's another $10 to keep you on a little longer, and to confirm that Alan Jackson was not, in fact, a member of the Jackson 5. I mean, seriously, could you imagine him singing ABC with a twang? Actually, yes. I probably can't do it today, but I'm really tempted to do an Alan Jackson impersonation, actually trying to do ABC. I could maybe respin ABC and do it to the tune of like Chattahoochee. But I'm gonna pull up the lyrics and look at it. Thanks, Jer Bear.
That actually makes me want to find 5 other singing musical artists named Jackson and create a new Jackson 5.
Oh man. Did they all have to be singers? You get like a famous director. Peter Jackson could sing along with there.
Peter Jackson, that would be. Oh, and this is $9 from LA Silver Surfers. Hey, what's up? Are you in LA? Do you surf? Hit me up.
See? I gave you one of the easy ones. $10 from Clever Name 2. I went to see a theatrical performance on puns the other day. It was really just a play on words. It's pun night. By the way, I live in Austin, Texas, which is home of the what's it called? The O. Henry Pun-Off. It is a pun competition that I think is annual. There's a lot of live stuff here. I live in the live music capital of the world, and there's lots of standard. By the way, when are you going to come down and work the Velveeta room?
It's funny. I tried to hit them up a while ago, and I've been semi-retired from comedy since COVID, but yeah, I've been trying to get down there. I remember I was coming down to do something not too long ago, and then, or I guess when COVID hit, I was supposed to come down, and that March 2020, and then that got canceled, and I've got to make it down. I don't have an answer for that, but I would love to find a cool venue and do something down there and get all the people.
We should talk after, because well, I won't say that I'm in tight. I have connections to the Velveeta room, so okay. And I was thinking about, so I toured for a while with my magic show, and on occasion I will work a joke in there, but I thought I could come up with like a 10-minute comedy magic thing and then just work the Velveeta room someday. So maybe we'll do a double header there.
Okay. No, that would be really fun. That would be cool. I will not do the Joe Rogan room.
Yeah. I won't do the Joe Rogan anything, but $10 from S Top 10. Oh, yeah, no, I think it was yours, but I'll read it. Glad to see Ian. I know I asked this on this show before, but if Moses and Noah got into a fist fight, who do you think would win? My money's on Noah because he built the ark. Yeah, he can swing a hammer.
He can swing a hammer, right? I mean, although Moses, I mean, how many? I'm not a big Bible guy. How many days did he spend in the desert? I mean, he's probably got crazy cardio.
Yeah.
So,
and
it would be, if it was a war of attrition, it's Moses. If it was a quick one. Walk.
By the way, not that I give the slightest fuck at all, and you probably might not either. Do you think this fight between Tyson and Paul is going to actually happen?
I now I don't know, because of all the stuff that's been happening with Tyson and all the news around that, like he had, which is weird. He had like an ulcer or something, and they're like, it's because he's old. But yeah, I don't know. I'm interested in seeing it though. Just Although I don't know, I can't say I'm interested in seeing it. I'm tired of this guy fighting old. Just fight somebody your age that is of your skill. Like it's like if it's not a 13-year-old jujitsu person or a 57-year-old who's in a walker, he won't fight him. It's driving me crazy. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, they could both kick my ass. I'm not worried about a 58-year-old Mike Tyson take me out in a heartbeat.
I mean, the one thing I will say is usually power doesn't go away. So Mike Tyson is known for his power. So it's like if he connects, that could be the end of the day for anybody. So that's the only reason I'm interested. I would love to see that happen because I kind of like Mike more than I like Jake Paul.
which is really weird because I get what you're saying. I can't stand Mike Tyson, and yet I just find Jake Paul just that much more annoying. But this one from Mousetrap is yours.
All right, cool. Mouse, here in Australia, there's a narrative about the Chinese stealing and eating carp and oysters. I had no idea that was untrue and just good old racism. Yeah, it's
if you said people were eating oysters, like, Trump stands up there and he's like, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. If he said they're eating oysters, I think that might have been weirder.
Yeah, you're like, well, what's the problem? And where are they getting these oysters in Ohio?
From the geese.
And who keeps oysters as pets?
There we go. All right. Just a few more to get to. $10 from Dutch Kiwi from New Zealand. Just spent half an hour to vouch for a friend to regain his gun license and wasn't the only one. Wait, just spent half an hour to vouch for a friend to regain his gun license and wasn't the only one. I'm not sure I fully understand, but I appreciate it. I guess.
I think it meant to be from New Zealand. I think it was not from. I think it was from.
Yeah.
And a half an hour to vouch for a friend.
But that's
maybe
not
you
like
got to have somebody
story.
vouch. Maybe you have to vouch for someone to get their gun back. Okay,
there we
go. That's not a bad idea.
I'm now caught up correctly. Thank you, Ian. For I'm now caught up, Dutch Kiwi. Yeah. The problem is that if you take a look at, like, for example, the kid that shot Trump in the ear, I think his grandpa bought him that rifle, and I can't imagine that he'd have he wouldn't have a couple family members that might have been able to vouch for him to get a weapon. So I'm not quite sure how much that solves, but I don't know what the specifics are. It's at least a cool proposal.
Yeah, New Zealand definitely has seems like they have much better laws than we do.
I like Australia's gun laws better than ours. And I'm a gun owner.
Yeah, like most places, gun laws better than ours, except for Iraq and Iran. Iran and Iraq, they have a little bit worse gun laws than we do. Every place else seems to have better ones. All right, $10 from Jer Bear. Matt, we have never met in person, but if you have any scheduled debates here in Michigan, or if I ever make it to Austin, Texas, I'd be honored to meet you. P.S. All my exes wear Rolexes.
I tell you what's most likely to happen, Jer Bear, and that is Arden and I might end up making a trip up to Detroit to go to the Reptarium and the Legacy at some point. And so that would definitely be that's the highest probability chance that we'll end up in Michigan. And if we do, we'll announce it and talk about it. But thanks so much. It'd be an honor.
Earlier, by the way, you said you had a reptile show, and I thought you said I had an erectile show.
Yeah.
Give me a second to figure out what you were talking about, and then I remember, Matt's into reptiles.
Yeah, Art and I keep and breed 15 species of snakes and 5 species of lizards, although primarily we produce ball pythons, but we also have false water cobras, black-tailed creepers, jungle carpet pythons, woma pythons, king snakes, milk snakes, hognose snakes, a lot. And so on the weekends, you will frequently find me as a vendor at reptile expos. This week, we're working one just an hour from home up in Belton, Texas. And so we'll be there this weekend. Look it up, Herps Expo, Belton, Texas.
My mom and I used to... sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying from Mr. Boricua, pronounced Boricua, roll the R a tiny bit. Boricua. Plus, have Ian back. Do I have to have Ian back to pronounce it correctly? Like you're telling me, just pronounce it Boricua with a tiny bit. So I think I nailed it on that third one. I wonder if I'll be able to pronounce it correctly when Ian's not here. I tell you what, next week when Ian's not here, send another super chat. We'll see if I can do it without him. And if not, I'll definitely invite him back.
That's a deal. All right, $10 from JamNick06. Sorry. Hashtag fire Jimmy, not Ian.
Nice. Thank you so much, Jamnick. And the final super chat for today. I always say that because it's the last one on the list so that 2 or 3 other people will send in another $10 while I'm reading this one just to throw me off and make me a liar. $10 from Allison King. Thank you for helping me come out as an atheist to my religious family. No one told me to go away. Now that is incredibly heartwarming. Now, Ian's a lifelong atheist. And I think when we have Ian back on, one of the things we'll do is talk about what the differences between being a lifelong atheist and what you may have to deal with and interactions with friends and family who are religious of a sort, compared to someone who's in my position or someone like Allison, who may have a lot of religious family members and friends and be worried that they're not going to like you anymore or they're going to cut you off. And let me tell you, that happens a lot. But I have good news. Not only do we have a direct example here from Allison King that she was able to come out and family didn't tell her to go away, but I know plenty of people that have had really good experience with that. Dan Barker, by the way, after he became an atheist, managed to convince his parents. So you can teach old dogs new tricks on occasion if you do it right, and they're the right dogs. There are teenagers that have sent us emails talking about how they were been kicked out of their family. I've seen video of parents yelling at their kids that if you don't believe in God, you're not getting any Christmas presents, which is, I mean, it just makes me giggle. Apart from the fact that they're attacking the kid, I don't understand parents who can put a God that they've never had any actual interaction with, no matter what they think happened, over their kids. Like, I don't even have kids. I can't have kids. And if anybody tried to tell me, just a random neighborhood kid or my niece and nephew, that I have to care about a God more than I care about them, go fuck yourself. Please stop fucking other people, because you don't deserve to have kids. You don't deserve to be bringing kids into a world where you're going to put them second to your imaginary friend. And this privileged position of religion has people absolutely terrified to be themselves, to say who they are, for fear of the consequences. That's the privileged position of religion, not just the tax exempt status, not just the fact that every city you move to, you could say, well, I'm part of this religion, so there's a church there and you're welcomed and they help you out right off the bat. This is why the secular community needs to build communities. And this is why we need more and more people in those communities, including right here in chat, because that's what makes it feel safer for people to try to branch out, try to reach out. And when people like Allison say it worked well for me, that makes it just a little bit more possible and allows for other people to be a little bit more optimistic about how they're going to be treated as well. We need more stories about people's real lived experience coming out from religion and how it was bad and how it was good and how nobody needs to feel alone doing it. Thanks so much, Allison. I really appreciate that message.
Absolutely. Oh, you did get another one. See that?
I got
$10 from Regato. My cat got fined for littering.
That's I'm actually in favor of that one. So thank you there. And another $10 from Clever Name 2. Did you hear about the police station that had his toilet stolen? The cops have nothing to go on. It's like every time we have a comedian on here, I try harder to think of 3 or 4 more jokes than I'd normally tell. And everybody in chat decides, it's like we're all auditioned to see if we can. Oh, wait, there's another one. Please, Ian, put me in your next funny movie.
I love from Carpe, the $10 from Carpe the DM. I love that. Nice. Rewatched The West Wing. the end of season 5, beginning of season 6 with the Israel-Palestine peace talks hits differently now with the current events. Thoughts?
I've watched every episode of The West Wing 11 times.
Wow.
I've watched the entire series. It's my all-time favorite series of anything. I've watched the entire series start to finish 11 times. I know what you're talking about, and without turning this into the West Wing Revisited, I think the writing on The West Wing is outstanding, and I think their coverage of and their education they provided on a lot of world topics is outstanding. I wish President Bartlett were president of this country in reality here. That particular thing, how the difficulties that they portrayed there, I think, are the most important part. How the individual parties have such a strong investment that it feels intractable. It feels like there can be no solution. And I hate to say it, it may be that there is no good solution. I want Israel to be free and self-governing and able to protect itself. And I would like for Arabs and Palestinians to have a land, to not be slaughtered, to not be just de facto associated with terrorists, and to actually free them from that association with terrorists, where we don't have to worry about Hamas and Hezbollah and everything else. But I'm not the guy that's going to solve the issue. And it would be monumentally arrogant and stupid of me to think that I can boil down this complex thing into a bumper sticker. And it frustrates me that so many people that I respect and generally get along with are in some ways going down the easy bumper sticker road with this, and then pretending that the rest of us who aren't ready to just say, yes, this is absolutely a war crime, genocide, but instead are more likely to say there are probably war crimes going on here, and this is seeming to look more like a genocide than anything else. The fact that there are people trying to be measured and saying we need to get the UN involved, we want to, sanctions and everything else. And I know they banned the UN rep from coming to Israel. I'm opposed to that, but I'm not a Zionist and I'm not pro-Israel anyway. And so every time I say anything about this, I get it from both sides. I'm both sided by both sides. And I think the only thing that makes me optimistic is that given the choice between living in a country where people are apathetic and completely uninformed about what's happening elsewhere in the world, living in a world where we are rightly viewed as the ignorant Americans who don't know anything about what's going on anywhere else in the world, and we expect the entire world to cater to us, or living in a world where a younger generation is starting to be more involved and care more, even if it might not be completely accurate, or even if some of it might be misinformed or misguided. The fact that there's participation is the strongest highlight I can take from this to make me feel emboldened and optimistic about a future. But man, watching this escalate and watching Iran throw missiles at Israel, where Andrew Seidel and I were talking about the possibilities of a civil war in the United States, a full-scale massive war in the Middle East is looking virtually inevitable. And we're going to have to do a lot of hard talking about stuff. And a lot of people who are running their mouth are going to have to acknowledge that none of us know enough, and nobody has an actual solution that is right and fair for everybody involved. At least that's my take. If somebody does have that solution, I haven't been told it yet.
Neither have I.
And the absolute final super chat of the day.
Sweet. And here it is from $10 from Jer Bear again. Time to make like a newborn and head out.
There you go. Time to make like a newborn and head out. Ian, where can people find you? What have you got to promote? Where should they go see you and hang out? Tell them about your podcast.
Well, yeah, by the way, if you ever want to come on there, it's very informal, but it's Thursdays at noon Pacific. If you ever want to come on, Matt, I'd love to have you on that too. It's called Critical and Thinking. And we go live. Me and a comedian named Ty Barnett. We only talk about politics, which is not how it meant to be started. It's how he started it. We started as a comedy interview show, and next thing you know, we're 4 years in talking about politics because we couldn't stop talking about the news of the day, especially during Trump. And so it's facebook.com/critical and thinking. If you guys want to come tune in any Thursday at noon Pacific, we go live and for about an hour and a half, and there's a chat going on and people talk. We read the chats online, and we've got a pretty good following. And then it goes on all the podcast purveyors that following Monday. But really, it's fun just to watch it kind of like this live on Facebook, and it also goes live on YouTube. But that's new for us. But hopefully one day we'll have Matt on. That'd be fun. And that's really it. Although I'm going to drop something here. I don't have anything to promote. I am in the process. I've been trying to make a film for 4 years, and it's a feature film that I wrote that it's like really close to my heart. It's called Standby. And I've had the lead in it is Sean Astin. I've had Sean on for 2 years, and we just got John Cleese, and he had time to shoot. So we literally shot. We don't have the money to make the whole movie yet. We're still trying to raise money. We're like $800,000 short for making the entire film. But John was here and he said, "Can we shoot my scenes so I can be done with it?" So we shot a couple weeks ago. We shot 15 pages of my feature film with Sean Astin and John Cleese, and it was like fucking magic. It was like, those two are amazing. And I'm not saying that because it's my shit. I'm saying it because they just blew me out of the water. So now I got to try to find the rest of the money and make the movie, but I'm hopeful that we're going to. But in the next year or two, please be on the lookout for a movie starring Sean Astin called Standby. Hopefully it'll actually be in the theaters. And if you know any investors out there that are looking to invest in a movie, it's got a really great cast on top of those guys. And it's a very low budget, independent art house drama that's kind of loosely based on the movie Being There, the Peter Sellers, Hal Ashby movie. So that's what I'm really excited about. And I'm hoping I can be presenting that to you guys 2025. So even though I don't believe in superstition, fingers crossed.
Yes. My fingers are crossed like this, like this, like this. I did them before with my ninja stuff. I got fingers crossed all over the place. Huge thank you to Ian for being here tonight, and to Arden for producing, and for Dragon for call screening, and all of our moderators. And as I said before, all of you who make the show possible. You guys, you make my Wednesday nights so awesome. This weekend, we're going to be working at Reptile Expo, but I also got videos loaded up in the queue for my Patreon project, Atheist Debates, or patreon.com/Atheist Debates. All of the videos for the next month are already not only posted, but they are queued up. And if you join my Patreon, you'll get early access to all of them, but everything will be available to everyone for free eventually. This isn't just, come give me money, but yeah, come give me money. I like having healthcare, like having a roof over my head. I'm cooking at home more, and I'm getting, I'm even better at it, all this stuff. Anyway, thanks everybody for making my Wednesday so awesome. And what's really strange to me is I went and looked at Ian's IMDb entry, and his is better than mine. And so I really think that we should start working on improving my IMDb entry. Go take a look at him. See what we've both done at IMDb. You guys would be surprised. But in any case, thanks everybody for tuning in. If you want to be one of the Patreon producers, you can go to patreon.com/calltheline. You can go to linemerch.com to find more stuff here on the line. We will see you back with the Transatlantic Call-In Show at 2:00 tomorrow at the exact same time that Ian's going to be going live, which means since I'll never be on TACIS, sure, I'll be on your show. Come back again.